Hey, what's up everybody? It's Lids, and we're back for some more Rogue Mage, the new Gwent single-player roguelike game, and let's hop into Laboratory because we are today looking at doing what is the, I don't know if you want to call it the last or second to last setup, archetype, starting deck, if you will, or at least combination of starting deck plus key card, because today we're looking at doing Hive Mind plus Queen MEVE, and okay. The one thing we haven't done outside of this would be the totally randomized set, which I imagine, once we finish a MEVE run, then we might be looking to do that. Or we've also talked a little bit about trying to go with a maximum point setup and maybe break 1,000 points in a match, but getting a little ahead of ourselves here. That's an aside. So for today, Hive Mind, Queen MEVE. It has been a little over a week, about a week and a half since I last played, so I'm perhaps a little bit rusty. I think this one could be a little bit difficult. So let's hop in and we'll talk more about the specifics, because Queen MEVE, her thing is that every 3 turns at the start of that, or at the end of that turn rather, boosts all allied units by 1, and then of course, as any key card does, evolves when we defeat an elite enemy. And so basically the idea here being that you want to flood the board with as many units as possible, as quickly as possible, and play MEVE as quickly as possible as well, so that you can get that boost happening as many times as you can before the match ends, and you're getting the maximum number of units boosted when that happens. So that means that we're going to try to, well, spawn in a ton of cards as quickly as possible to support MEVE, and probably for that reason, going to prioritize things like, Night Wraith is, yes, it does that, but it's not amazing at that. But less so on the consumption side with Slizzard, with Cyclops, and, Ethereal could definitely work. Hjalmar, assuming that we do get a lot of units on the board quickly, would be good. Yeah, Germain is a good example of cards like this. Cards that can spawn in a ton of cards really quickly. They don't have to be all that powerful individually, but they just need to be numerous to help support MEVE. And then obviously that means we need to get MEVE. So that's the big idea. And then in terms of our spell setup, we have certainly had some success as of late with this combination of Cleanse, Portal, and Masterful Thunder. I feel like it gives us a nice balance between protecting our most important cards like MEVE, although perhaps because she starts out with 7 power and 2 armor, it's pretty difficult for our opponents to take her out in one hit. So maybe she's a little less reliant on getting boosts compared to other key cards we've seen in the past that really need that so that they don't immediately get answered. For what it's worth, in multiplayer Gwent, she has to be boosted in order to activate this ability, but that's not the case here. And then, and if she evolves, spawn a volunteer on both sides of this unit, and then still do the boost all allied units, so it's just a way of getting a couple more cards on the board. Volunteers, if they're the same as multiplayer Gwents, they're 2 power units that don't have any special abilities, so basically turns her into, rather than a 7, a 11-point slam, and gives you more cards immediately to support MEVE. So, okay. It's, I'm curious to see what other upgrades we could get later on. Oh, hold on. I remember we recently unlocked Mirror Image. We've definitely not used it yet, but this is tempting. Spawn a 1-power copy of an allied unit on its row. I don't think this is restricted in who you can use it on, so to put this on MEVE, for example, and double the effectiveness of her, yes, it would be a 1-power copy of that, although at least in multiplayer Gwent, she would probably still have her 2 armor, so she wouldn't be incredibly easy to remove. Still somewhat easy to remove, but obviously, if that works, then that is fantastic value. But it is also very expensive at 7, or rather at 8 energy. They also could perhaps justify Masterful Cleanse, because if the whole idea of this deck is that we don't have any one card that is particularly important other than MEVE, but as we just said, at least the initial copy of MEVE is big enough that maybe we aren't too worried about her getting destroyed, then if we can boost all of the many units that we're trying to spawn in, that could be really useful. The other thing is that Rat Swarm, to give us a consistent way to make that happen, could be nice. Otherwise, we're going to be relying on probably acquiring additional cards that can do more of the whole spawning thing and probably a little less of the whole consumption thing. So it's going to be a little hard to pick these spells here, I feel like. Do you swap out Cleanse for Masterful Cleanse? It is more expensive. It does not do as much on a single unit. The high-end value is certainly bigger if you can get... What is it? This is... Normal Cleanse was boost 3, right? Where did it go? There it is. Yeah, boost 3, so you get 4 more units on the board, then this is worth more than it. Obviously, it costs twice as much, so it's a 1 point per energy, whereas if you get 6 or more units, then it is equal or better than Cleanse. So, I don't know, I don't love having every single spell being super expensive. Portal is really nice for what you found when we are in a tough spot trying to make a comeback. It is a great way to potentially get a lot of points quickly, whereas most other spells, once you've fallen behind, they don't have that much in the way of tempo. But maybe Masterful Cleanse and Masterful Thunder can do enough of that we aren't as reliant on having something like Portal, and that might open up other opportunities with things like either Rat Swarm, which is probably consistency more than anything for this deck, just to make sure that we can spawn in as many things as possible to support MEVE when needed most. But, I mean, the really high-risk, high-reward approach would be Mirror Image. It's kind of memey, and because we have... It's super expensive. Because of that, we probably want to have something that's a little bit cheaper. I wish there was an option, a way in which to swap out your spells in the middle of a run. So I don't think there is one, or at least if there is, I don't think we've seen it. I mean, certainly there are times when, if you were smart with what you picked with your starting selection, then you wouldn't really have any reason to switch mid-run, but there are times like these where it feels like, okay, at least initially when we don't have too many ways to guarantee we can spawn in a ton of units outside of Germain, and to a much lesser extent, Night Wraith, feels like early in the run, Rat Swarm will be very useful to us, but assuming that we can acquire more units by mid to late run, then Rat Swarm will probably fade into the background and not be a very big factor for us, and at that point we would probably prefer to have something like Mirror Image for those few occasions where we really need to get a big combo going. So, I don't know. I guess we'll go for this setup, but as I said, I feel like this is going to be a little bit tricky. I think Hive Mind, outside of Detloff, which we had a lot of success with, I feel like is perhaps the hardest deck to do. And I think MEVE with Shawnee. Shawnee might be the single most difficult key card, I feel like, and then MEVE might be the second most difficult. It's at least what I would think might be the case. Of course, varies from run to run, but, and we haven't tried MEVE yet, but let's see. Is there anything we'd like to switch around for our potion? Because the energy is nice, especially given how we didn't go with the absolutely most expensive setup, but, I mean, we came close. It is still pretty expensive spell setup, so we might want to stick with the energy, and it has, for the most part, been a very nice addition for us. So I don't think we can risk losing Night Wraiths, even if they aren't usually that powerful. I mean, this would be particularly effective when you have really expensive spells, like Masterful Thunder, Masterful Cleanse, less so with Rat Swarm, although I mean, that means you're getting 8 units spawned in one turn, which is ridiculous. So that gives you crazy tempo if you can combine that with MEVE, but I think we still stick with the energy. I think we keep it simple. This, though, I think we're going to need to switch around. Because if I remember correctly, last time, yes, we took Curse of Constraint, which reduces our row space by 1. I don't think we can do that, because we are getting all of our power from flooding the rows with as many cards as possible and then boosting all those cards. And so any rows, we need all the row space we can get. That is the primary thing that limits our potential. So to further limit our potential like that, I think is not a direction we want to go in. So we are not really a damage deck outside of Cyclops. Yes, Werecat, yes. Hjalmar, I mean, what I'm wondering is, could we throw Curse of Futility on here and not be too concerned about the consequences there? Because if the primary thing we're trying to do is combine MEVE with a whole bunch of weak units for boosting, then damage is not really the primary thing we're trying to do, although Hjalmar is nice to go along with that. I mean, if he's doing a lot of damage to one enemy, having one armor on that one enemy is not a huge deal. But I guess it's somewhat similar with Cyclops there. There are other alternatives, though. And we start with Treasure in their deck. We've not tried that, though. I am kind of curious how well they use that. Start with Curse cards in deck. Bigger cooldown. Less energy. Already mess with these things quite a bit. I think we might try this. I think we might go with the armor. It might actually have been a little bit overkill. So I think it filled our meter quite a bit. Just out of curiosity. Okay, good thing we checked. Yeah, we can lower some other stuff, possibly even more. And I kind of doubt we can go further than this, but let's see. Yeah, that's a big one. Yeah, we might be right at the breaking point here, it would seem. Okay, so let's go for this then. We'll still be on adept difficulty, and we'll start the run. So what boss are we gonna have? Okay, it's the Swamp Dude. I think this is the most difficult boss. Probably. Well, what? It's most effective when you have some highly boosted cards, so it's probably the most dangerous for Bulwark. Whereas if we are flooding the rows with a bunch of cards and spreading the points on those cards, maybe this is kind of the best type of deck to run against it. But it does feel like the Flamey boss is far and away the easiest, at least if you have a damaging spell, then you can pretty much immediately shut down the whole gimmick that it has. But let's take a closer look at other things we have in this map. Obviously, we'll start with the normal battle, but question is, oftentimes, how aggressive do we want to be on elite battles? So we have one down here, one up there. Early elites. Potential for late, very late double elite here, but I'm not really sure we would want to do that. Especially if we do this one, give a battle immediately afterward, and if we're trying to head over to this elite, then we don't even have a place of power to restore energy in between. We do have one in between this elite and that normal enemy, and then the boss, but that still feels like that's asking for trouble. So I think that probably means, assuming we want to do at least one elite battle, it's probably going to have to be one of these two, and that's probably going to be it for the remainder of the run, unless we could do this and then bail to the north to restore energy and dodge this elite battle. But I might prefer this lead up to the boss with the places of power and events right before the boss rather than a battle, because that could lead us to blow through a lot of our energy right before we need it most. Definitely feels like this is less battle-centric in the southern route. Significantly less so. Wow. Wow. I mean, if we do like this, we have 1 battle, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, then if we go here, we have to go through the elite. Okay. I'm gonna say, felt like there was a route there we could have taken that would have been just a tiny number of battles, which seems odd. And of course, we can get new cards from the battles, so we would still like to do some of those, but might dodge some of the late ones. And we're getting ahead of ourselves, of course. We don't need to make all those decisions just yet, but let's see how we can do now. So I mean, these are actually some of the best cards combined with MEVE in our starting deck, because we were saying how we really want to spawn in units, but then again, we don't have MEVE at the moment, so I think in general, destroying units with MEVE is not nearly as effective as it would be with particularly, now I'm blanking out on his name, Detloff, particularly compared to Detloff. Shawnee, even it was somewhat useful to help replay cards with big deploy abilities, but that's just very much not something that MEVE helps us do. Oh, okay. Ethereal. I mean, with normal cleanse, Ethereal is an interesting way to transform a bunch of cards into stronger versions. But, well... Masterful Cleanse does not help us too much in that regard. You're just damage. Yeah. That also potentially weakens Ethereal. Is this every turn? It's every turn. Yeah. So, not loving how we're starting here. So you have Zeal? Yeah, you do. I mean, you could go Ethereal plus Rat Swarm and give lots of targets for them. Obviously, there's at least 2 here, if not more. And if we destroy the Night Wraith with Ethereal, then we can spawn in even more, so take your pick. Oh, also, Germain probably should have been our first turn play anyway, because earlier we play him, the quicker we can get him off cooldown. Okay, Greatsword. You're gonna just destroy a rat? Yeah. Okay, and that's what I mean. Slizzard is not very helpful for us. So... do we start the Germain action? Or do we go for Ethereal here? I think we probably do still go Germain, and let's try to flood this row as much as possible so that we can consider using Ethereal here in the future. But I don't know, I mean, I think... oh, that is a great counter against us, because that gets rid of all the little units that we were trying to spawn in, and makes Yalmar weaker. So, yeah, I mean, this might not... might not go so well for us here. This one might end kind of quickly. Okay, so that still triggers the death blow, which means we spawn in more rats. So we would like to, well, not have you hit Ethereal. You know, not to mention, we'd rather not hit Germain. We really want to, you know, get these cows and the rats, but you got rid of all the other stuff that was going to be here for Ethereal to go after. Okay, leading. Okay, so if we use Ethereal, it's -1 point. On the other hand, it does mean we can continue to go through here and set ourselves up for more points when we convert these weaker cards. Or we could throw in, and probably should throw in, Night Wraith here to at least delay how long it takes before we have to target Germain. I'm not liking this, guys. I am not liking the looks of this. This one, this run might not last very long. I mean, we could cleanse if we're concerned about them continuing to hit us. Yes, we have Hjalmar, which can help us a bit to hit somebody hard. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 with Hjalmar himself is not enough to destroy the Greatsword, which I think we need to hit it. We need to destroy it in 1 hit, otherwise it's just going to heal off all the damage before we can get rid of it. So, yeah, we could... even Cyclops we don't really want to use on Germain, because then Cyclops is a card that we have to convert, and that's even taller than Germain. I mean, Germain can still spawn stuff, whereas Cyclops wants to use its order ability. It's not really doing anything else, but... eesh. I don't like it. I don't particularly like it. Oh, and we haven't taken our turn yet. I knew that. We have taken our turn yet? Oh, we need to cancel that. That's why. Okay, they're being smart with the card they're targeting here.
Never dropped a 1, but I've thrown a plenty.
Okay, I think we might need to ban an Ethereal at this point. It's probably not worth it anymore, and anything that does wants to be destroyed or consumed, we can do so with this lizard. I think that's the direction we have to go in here.
The moon
So we do have a decent number of units, which means Hjalmar is worth a fair bit. But still am not feeling great about where we stand at the moment. Yes, there is the big burst of points we can get from Masterful Cleanse. The more units we have, the bigger that is. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. We are going to lose you to bleed on this turn. But if we wait and play you next turn, then we'll replace this with whatever card we play next. So, I don't know. I don't know, man. I don't know, man. Don't hit numerous units with one card. Don't do that. Oh no. Oh dear. We not liking this. Not really liking this at the moment. Yeah. I mean, tell you what. I think we spawn on this turn, and next turn we prepare to cleanse. Because otherwise, I'm not sure we're going to catch them in time.
And to think I get paid for this.
Don't move, love, and maybe I'll spare you.
Okay, so before... Oh, actually, yeah, we can consume it on net gain units here, so let's do that. Then let's play Hjalmar, who I believe has enough damage to destroy you. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yeah, he's more than enough. So let's use him, get rid of their biggest card, the Greatsword. And now that we have, should be a bunch of units on the board, we go with Masterful Cleanse, because, afraid we kind of need it. Okay, fortunately, we do still have some damage units, not nearly as many now, but... Now, let's consume a Harpy Egg, I think. Spawn in the Harpy. And maybe we can get by now without using energy, because, I mean, as we were saying before, these are expensive spells. The ones that we've selected here, so we need to be mindful of when we are and are not using them. Okay, how many boosts is he gonna get? Middle of the road. Okay, get one more of you. And anyone who is a priority to remove. They have a lot of armor. So Cyclops is not really helping us all that much here. Not really helping us all that much here. We don't really have anything that we need to destroy, and if anything, we want to keep cards on the board, not remove them. So, might just go for a little... Tell you what. Germain will not have time to spawn in another unit. He will not come off cooldown before the end of this match, and he is a damage card, and we've seen they have at least some things that benefit from damaged units. So let's get rid of Germain. And use that damage to destroy you, I guess. Don't really have anything that we need to consume here. Same reason why we didn't love Cyclops, so we're going to not use the Slizzard's consumption. Because if anything, we might want to have a lot of units. Okay, fortunately, we dodged this. But we still only have a 3-point lead with this finisher here, so we have to ask ourselves, is Cyclops enough by itself? And the answer is, I have no idea. Because it's worth 5 points. We'll deal, I guess, 5 damage to ourselves in order to get rid of your 5 power card, which means we have an 8-point lead. That is too close to call, I think. We probably can't afford to take that chance unless, I'm pretty sure there is an achievement for winning a match by 1 point, and, you know, it's times like this where in the past we've usually said, all right, we should play it safe and we should do something spell-wise to give us a bigger margin, but I suppose every now and again, at least until we've unlocked that achievement, we should maybe take those types of chances and see if we can get that achievement. So, all right, we'll do it. We might lose. I'm deliberately not using a boost when we probably should. And there it is! And there is the achievement. All right, from here on out, we will now proceed to not call it that close. We'll not cut it that close. When it seems like they have the ability to catch us, we will make a point of, well, hopefully, do it a little more to take a larger lead. Okay, so now we can either get another card that benefits from getting destroyed or do cards that do consumption, and that, as we said, that is what you want to do in some cases with other key cards for Hive Mind, but not really here. It's one thing for Detloff, but not really what we're looking for MEVE, and we could remove some of them here. I mean, on one hand, it's probably a good idea to have at least some of them, because as we see here, when we are looking to add cards, there's certainly the chance that we might find some good Death Wish cards that we want to make sure we can trigger that Death Wish on. But for the most part, we are trying to swarm, not consume. So I think we might get rid of the Cyclops. I think that's actually better. Not really the type of pickup I was looking for. Was hoping that we would gain a card that could give us additional spawning, but we were not so lucky. And so now, with that reality check, we need to ask ourselves, if we do want this elite battle, we're gonna have to do it kinda soon. And almost every pathway to it is just treasure chests and events. Only way we could get one more battle beforehand would be if we go this route, and maybe that means we could acquire an additional card that could help us spawn in more stuff, but otherwise I do not feel confident about our ability to take on this elite right now. So, I mean, as we said before, though, that is really the only feasible elite to go after, because this one, and we could then go northward to get a place of power afterward and dodge this secondary elite. But this one is pretty much out of the question, because the only way to get there is through this one, and there's no way to restore energy in between, and that is usually a recipe for disaster. So, I think we take this, and then we make up our minds based on how good this treasure chest is. Do we maybe go for a battle and event and see from there? Do we feel better about taking on this elite? Do we, for whatever reason, feel like double event is preferable, or do we just want to dodge altogether and go this southern route? I'm not sure, but let's keep our options open. Okay. Okay, this is a little bit tough. Girdle, Giant Strength. Again, great for some Hive Mind decks. We saw it was absolutely amazing when we were using Detloff, because this would be the recipe for success to get near or potentially even above 1,000 points with Detloff. But we're not using Detloff in this run. Rather than concentrating all of our boosts on one card, we are spreading them out across numerous cards, which means doubling a single allied unit's power is probably not going to be a huge deal. If we could double the amount of boosts on every ally, that'd be a whole different story, but that's not what the card does. Raven's Armor, although it does not directly give us points, it does give us armor. And I'm not clear on, because we've actually never taken this before, I don't think. Or if we have, it was only very briefly. Does it only give armor to cards in our starting deck, or does it also give armor to cards that we spawn in? Because we are doing a lot of unit spawning, or at least that's what we're trying to do. So, as we saw in the previous battle, one of the tricky things was we spawned in a bunch of 1-power units, and our opponent had a way to just destroy many of them in one turn, which is what led us to a dangerous spot. So if we can protect some of those weak 1-power cards and give us more opportunity to boost them up before they get destroyed, then Raven's Armor could actually be really useful to us. The other thing is that I believe since it is a passive and it is an artifact, it technically stays on the board throughout the match and therefore is taking up a board spot. And as we were saying when we were choosing our curses, that's not really something we want to do, because we need all the board space we can get. That is where we are getting all of our power from. So neither of these are great. But maybe we go Girdle of Giant Strength. We did, of course, choose to keep the Slizzard, which is the best way to capitalize on this Girdle of Giant Strength. You just consume a whole bunch of stuff with it, and then you, at the end of the match, double the power of the Slizzard. We don't really have good targets to consume with it, because normally you'd be going after Dettloff, and we don't have Dettloff. But maybe it's going to be tough. Because on one hand, you could say, all right, well, in that case, you don't have those cards now, but try to get them. Well, if we do that, then suddenly we're pulling ourselves in two opposite directions. On one hand, for MEVE, we want to try to spawn in as many cards as possible, and we don't really want to consume at all, because that limits the number of cards we have on the board. On the other hand, if we're trying to play around with Slizzard, then we are trying to consume all the cards on the board and concentrate the power in one unit. They're two polar opposites, and so, although it might sound interesting to go Girdle of Giant Strength, I feel like this is kind of a trap. I mean, either we're going middle of the road and not really optimizing for either of them, or we're choosing one and hindering the other. So I think we kind of have to do Raven's Armor. I don't love it. I mean, if it does give armor to even the units that we spawn in, then it could be a decent addition, yes, but I kind of doubt that. And as we said, it does take up, I imagine, a spot on the board permanently for the entirety of the match, so it's also not great. I think for that reason, we will probably go the Southern route here. We will probably dodge this Elite battle, unless we happen to get an amazing addition from this battle, but I don't think we will. So we're trying to find some way to get extra power here, and we were hoping that treasure chest would help us make it happen. For the most part, it did not. I mean, even the magnifying spyglass, which we had found on many prior occasions, to guarantee that we could draw it into Queen MEVE would have been great, but, I mean, now we find ourselves with the Slizzard, and, I mean, sure, we do have a bunch of Death Wish cards, so maybe we hold on to them for now. Let's dump the Cyclops. I mean, we'd like to get MEVE, see if we can with the last redraw. On the other hand, I mean, these cards do work with Slizzard. Remind me what your deal is. If you control 6 or more Spectres, damage all enemy units by 3. That is kind of a counter if we are flooding the board with MEVE. It's less of a counter if we are concentrating our power with the Slizzard, because fewer units means they're getting less damage out of this. I mean, if it damages all of our units by 3 and we have a bunch of 1-power rats or drones or whatnot on the board that we are trying to boost up with MEVE, then they all get destroyed before we can do that boosting. Even if they've been boosted once, they still get destroyed. So I think we actually do prioritize this. Then we're probably going to draw into MEVE. Or Ethereal. I mean, we will spawn in Night Wraiths. Or rather, Night Wraiths will spawn in Rats, which we can use to set up Ethereal a bit. And the armor on Ethereal actually could be quite useful. Because, as we've seen, our opponents, as soon as they see this thing, they always go after it, and that makes it substantially weaker, usually oftentimes a net negative play. So I think we go Night Wraith, or even, I guess we could go Slizzard first and then play Night Wraith and immediately consume it. Yeah, that's probably preferable. So yeah, this Raven's Armor does make it much safer to play our high priority cards. That's the key benefit from it. Consume stuff. We do not have basically any damage besides coming from our leader ability. And so for that reason, I very much think that they will manage to get this leader ability off. Actually, oh, hold on. Wait, if they do that, and they do it in one turn when they have 6 Spectres, and then if we don't get rid of a Spectre, they can just continue to do it every turn, right? Okay, we're gonna have to use leader ability at some point. Ideally, we wait for an opportunity to get Masterful Thunder off and destroy one card and damage adjacent cards, and maybe in doing so, destroy multiple Spectres in one turn. That would be preferable. We were planning on playing Night Wraith next to the Slizzard to immediately consume it, but that's technically not that time sensitive. I mean, Ethereal is, but that's also something that would not work very well if they get their leader ability off. So I think we actually prioritize Jermaine here, because he definitely benefits more from the longer he has on the board. Then again, he's also a card that is going to get countered by you. Yeah, I mean, this is, again, anti-swarm, this setup. Oh, okay, I mean, I like that you consumed the beast, which was going to be a powerful card. Ooh, okay, Hjalmar. Hjalmar does give us actually a considerable bit of damage here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 8 units is not enough to destroy you, at least not yet. But I suppose now we can start doing this. And, I mean, eventually we might just run out of board space. We're waiting for a high priority card to destroy with you. You are not a Spectre. But what did they just get rid of? No, we ate the Night Wraith. And really? Did they use a 3 damage order ability on a 1 power rat? And in doing so, lose the 1 boost per turn? Possibly. Possibly. Alright, let's go Night Wraith once again here, because we still have yet to see them play a really high priority card for us to go after. I mean, 8 points is it's not a bad Hjalmar target, but we'd probably still prefer to go after something that is more significant engine. Like if they let the beast on the board, probably would have gone after that, but they ate it for us, which was rather nice of them to do. Okay, and that spawns rats on our side of the board if it gets destroyed, which is kind of nice. On the other hand, we just drew into MEVE, and we have a ton of units on the board, so this is the exact setup we want for MEVE, just we'd like to, you know, have gotten her out here a little bit earlier. So I think what we'll do here is we will, yes, use MEVE. Let's put her here.
It's war you want, then war you shall have.
And that means that we don't want to consume if we don't have to. Yeah, so we're just going to try to protect against the 6 Spectres by using Hjalmar. Yeah, pretty much. And we're going to run out of board space very, very soon, so we might need to do this eventually, but don't need to just yet. Okay, Pact. They have a taller unit, but it still is not a Spectre, so it's not really a card we want to go after with Hjalmar. And at this point, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17 damage. Basically, we can fill both rows entirely here. So I think that means, yes, we will, but we are expecting to need to use this Lizard on this turn. I mean, unless we're going to... We could start doing Ethereal, I suppose. So they have not done much to set this up yet. And we know we can destroy at least one of their Spectres with Hjalmar when needed. So let's do this. And this is the ideal setup for Ethereal, is you just have a bunch of 1 power units right next to it, so it can continue to go down the line. Except not when the board is full, technically. It doesn't have room for that. I mean, it's actually fine, because it means we're going to have space to play something on our next turn, so it does make it easier to pull off Hjalmar, but we do need to consider that. So now it would be the ideal setup for that. And they're just loading up on boost on that 1 unit, which actually means Hjalmar is particularly effective. Not sure if he has enough to destroy you. I mean, I wish you were boosting up one of your Spectres, because we were thinking we were going to use Hjalmar to destroy a Spectre, but right now you have, what, 2 Spectres. You need to get up to 6 to trigger your ability here. So if every unit you have remaining is 1 Spectre, then you have just enough. If one of them is not, then you don't. If one of them can spawn in multiple Spectres, then that is tricky. But yeah, I mean, that is more important than getting the extra damage on the Phantom, I think. Probably going to go for the overkill damage on you, to be honest. So let's... Oh, and not only does it prevent you from spawning in the new Ethereal, it also just bricks him altogether, because now this one no longer has his order ability. Alright, well, I mean, that has happened to us before. I should have remembered, but alas. Okay, so Hjalmar it is, in that case. And let us...
Who wants to taste Gallagher Steel?
I mean, unless... Technically speaking, we can wait. Technically speaking, we can. Let's play a Harpy Egg. We cannot use it yet. We cannot consume it yet, because I think we'll find the same issue that we just saw with the Ethereal, where if we try to consume it, we just won't have room to spawn in the Harpy. That might not be the case with the consumption. It might be slightly different than this destroy and then spawn. But we're going to keep all of our units on the board for this turn, because MEVE is going to boost everything in that case. So we want both rows completely full, and they are, which makes MEVE very valuable to us. This is a Spectre. It is a Death Wish Spectre, so we don't love going after it, but now what we can do is, since MEVE is on cooldown, we're not as concerned about having maximum board space, so let's just consume one of these rats to create a little bit of room for us. Again, not consuming you, because we probably still need the board space. I mean, we could test it. Might need to test it, because, yes, I want to put in Hjalmar here and go after you. Or maybe even the Werecat, to be honest. But if we're going to continue to play one unit in this row per turn and consume one unit per turn, we're just never going to get out ahead enough to create board space enough to test this theory, or to not need to test this theory. So, but we do need the board space now anyway, right? So this should be our last turn, probably. Okay, we do need to do this. Because otherwise we wouldn't be able to play any of these. So now we go this route. And get rid of their rats. So again, it's not urgent that we destroy a Spectre. We would definitely rather not go after you. We don't have room for Germain, but that's, that's okay. Now I think we will destroy you. So let's do this to create space. And as we were saying, yes, technically if we destroy you, it will give us rats, but on the other hand, our rows are already completely full. So let's do this and just target your second biggest unit. Yes, this is bigger, but it's not a Spectre, and we do want to try to hit a Spectre so they can't trigger their leader ability, or at least we'll find it much more difficult to do that. And I think we'll have just enough time for me to trigger one more time here. And that's not a Spectre, so actually we seemingly would have been fine. Okay, so now either we can consume a rat and play a Harpy Egg, or we can consume a Harpy Egg and not have room to play a Harpy Egg. Technically, it's better to do that, and at least test to see if there is room for it. And there is, yeah, so it means we can't play you, but that's fine, because that was still worth more points. And now MEVE should trigger on this turn, and again, this is the ideal MEVE setup. You have both rows either completely full or just about full, so you're maximizing the boost from her, because the maximum number of cards per row is 9. In this case, as we were saying, Raven's Armor does take up a spot, so our rather than 18 total units we can fit on the board, it's just 17 here, but I mean 17 points of boost every 3 turns is pretty sweet. Also, we'd get the same value out of the Masterful Cleanse. Oh, that's a lot. That is basically the exact opposite of what we just did with MEVE, but it's okay. We had enough of a margin. We're still winning here. All right, so that is technically just about the best case scenario for us. And that would have been an enemy that was capable of countering us if they had enough Spectres to trigger their leader ability, but they didn't, which was weird. Destroy an allied unit, boost self-applied space power. Not loving it. Again, it's destruction, which is not really what we're trying to do. We're trying to spawn, and this is something that can spawn. So I think I'm leaning toward the Catechin here. We are definitely not getting rid of Hjalmar. And Harpy Egg, I mean, you could, but I think we'd like to add more units that spawn stuff. So wait, a small upgrade? I don't think we needed to use any energy in that battle, did we? Don't think so. So that was good in that way. But we've won more events, and then we need to make up our mind in terms of if we feel comfortable taking on this elite. Like, if we got lucky and got basically the same type of hand that we just got in that previous battle, we might be able to handle this elite. If we don't, then I am very doubtful we could pull it off. But that could possibly change depending on what happens here. Let's see, Ancient Writings. This usually gives us a new card, right? Or does it upgrades a card? I forget. It's usually good. Ancient writings. Whilst traveling late into the evening, or maybe I'm thinking of the well, you find the ruins of an old elven structure bathed in the light of a full moon. Upon numerous walls and pillars, strange symbols softly shine. You've always been fond of deciphering ancient scripts, and decide to spend some time trying to understand the mysterious etchings. Okay. So, I've long suspected from the 2 or 3 times we've had this encounter in the past that the end result depends on what your choices are here. And so, you know, like maybe power is something that upgrades the unit, whereas knowledge, I don't know what that would do, but I think in the past we're usually taking power. It's probably still the case here. Order versus chaos. Maybe we try chaos here. And then let's try life. Upgrade a unit by 5. I'm pretty sure that's just about what we've seen every other time we've done this. Okay, for what it's worth, upgrading ethereal by 5 makes it substantially better. Because, as we were saying before, if it gets hit, then it can actually turn into a negative point play, just because rather than creating copies of a 4 power unit, you're creating copies of a 3 or 2 or 1 power unit, and at that point, there's no way that's ever going to help you. So, however, if we can get that up to a 9-point unit, then suddenly, that is very likely to be beneficial to us, even if it gets hit. Okay, so that means what? How are we feeling about where we stand? MEVE is obviously good if we can find ways to spawn in units, and if necessary, we can use Rat Swarm to make that happen. Otherwise, we're relying on things like Germain, Catechin that we just picked up, the Night Wraiths, and not really Harpy Eggs, but those kinds of things to support MEVE. And if we don't get MEVE, then technically Ethereal has, at this point, probably become a win condition. If we can use Ethereal combined with, once again, swarming the board with a bunch of low power rats with Night Wraith, or cows with Germain. And in this case, Ekimara that spawns in is 3 points, which is still a net gain if we convert that into a 9-point Ethereal, but is that good enough to take on this elite? Because I'm still not sure that's the case. It's very close. It's just very draw dependent, basically. If we don't get MEVE or Ethereal, I think it's pretty much impossible. Unless we just spam energy all over the place. But even if we do that, we have a normal battle afterward, event after that, normal battle after that, maybe a place of power after that, although that's not really the direction we were planning to go in, because that would force us up here. When I think we were saying we were more interested in going this southernmost route, but I mean, I guess we could try that. I mean, I'm pretty sure we're about to lose, but we'll try it. I'm pretty sure we've just committed ourselves to a death sentence.
You some damned respect with this here blade.
I don't think we can take on an elite. We're gonna try, and the fact that we got all of the cards that I just said we need to win gives us a chance. Gives us a chance. We have MEVE, and we have the Ethereal. Oh, and also MEVE starts with 2 armor usually, and then combine in the treasure that we got for 2 additional armor, and should be much harder for them to take her out, but Maxi does have a lot of damage. So, I mean, these are some of our best ways to spawn in stuff. I think we actually do want stuff that can trigger that Death Wish. Technically, Ethereal can, but let's see if we can get something better than you. I think we're probably sticking with this. This is it's about as good as it can get. Hjalmar would be nice as a finisher. Oh, and Germain would be good for spawning as well, but I think we probably are looking to stick with this here. Yeah. Yeah, I think so. Order of operations-wise, it's probably still MEVE first, just so we can maximize the amount of time she has to trigger that leader ability, or that cooldown ability. Even if we don't immediately have units on the board, we can then use Night Wraith and Ethereal to immediately destroy the Night Wraith to spawn stuff in, and if necessary, we can use leader ability to spawn in 4 rats per turn, and that's worth a lot of units to help give MEVE fodder to boost up. So I think This is just about as good as it can get. Don't like Cyclops, though. Limits the amount of units we can have on the board, and that is not really something we are looking to do. I don't remember to what extent Maxie has units that we really want. Ah, she does have some units we want to destroy. Johnny and Sarah. She will likely play, but we could potentially target those with Thunder, and probably should. Because, yeah, I think we don't have great opportunities to restore energy after this one, but I think we have to assume that this is where we have to be willing to spend energy. So let's... Technically, I think we want to put Ethereal in this row with the Night Wraiths, because there's one more spot here, because Raven's Armor has taken up one spot in the melee row, and MEVE does not need to be in the same row as all the other units, so let's actually put MEVE melee row, and Ethereal plus everyone else in this row. So, as we were saying before, Masterful Cleanse, great when we have a lot of units on the board, but not nearly as good at buffing up one high priority card that we want to protect, so that is the risk of playing MEVE early, is that she's obviously the only target that Maxie could go after here, and not about to spend 6 energy to boost her by 1. So, fortunately, that 4 armor plus 7 base power should keep her out of removal range, but Maxie's Arsenal can give them additional damage here. That's going to duplicate itself. No! You're kidding me. Not like this. Not like this. I remember the first time, I think the first time we encountered Maxie, she never used that card. And then the second time we encountered her, she used it twice. So, it doesn't matter how much armor or how much base power MEVE has if Maxie just immediately pulls out the Poison Dagger and destroys our most important card. So we have probably just lost. Wow. Well, that was a big reversal. Here I was saying we had all the stuff we needed. I'm afraid, not really. Not really. So on one hand, I mean, we'll still try here. It might be possible with Ethereal carrying us, but we're gonna see. We're gonna see. So what I'd like to do is go Ethereal and ideally Rat Swarm to immediately set it up to spawn in additional copies of itself. 9 power units, a row full of those would be very nice. On the other hand, the quicker we can shut down this Whisperer, the more we can prevent it from continuing to spawn in additional copies of itself. So the earlier, the better for that. That's 3 points per turn, whereas this is 8-ish points per turn. Technically speaking, it is probably still better to do this. Although, as we saw previously, if we fill the row with Ethereals, then that actually prevents us from getting much value after that. And with 2 Night Wraiths and a Catechin, that might not be super necessary for us to be this aggressive with it, but we'll see. We'll see. Ethereal, we really need you in this one. We really need you in this one. So Johnny, that's what I was referring to. We definitely want to destroy him. Otherwise, they're going to get a lot of damage out of him. I mean, we're getting all the best cards. But then they destroy the centerpiece of the deck by getting rid of MEVE immediately. So we're going to test that theory. Is Ethereal enough of a win condition by itself? I'm not sure. So yes, we would like to get Jermaine out here as quickly as possible to maximize the number of units we can spawn in. We kind of, well, probably don't need him in the range row, as we were just saying. We spawned in the rats. We can get more with Night Wraith as well, and that's probably sufficient already. Probably going to be more than enough to fill this row to the point where it's actually going to be a detriment to us. So let's go Jermaine melee row here. And let's go for a leader ability to destroy Johnny. Wish he had some adjacent cards. Wish they played him down here where we could potentially get the overkill damage hitting this Whisper. But not the case. We do this. Get another Ethereal. Yeah. Okay, special. For a second, I thought that was the same card they played earlier to destroy MEVE, and I was deeply concerned.
You wanted to...
Oh, right. So with all these Mage Slayers, yeah, the first time we went against Maxie, she just was not using any of this super powerful stuff. Does she have a non-elite version? Because I thought the first time we encountered her, she was not an elite enemy, and then we did an elite battle, and she showed up, and I was like, what? But it was that time when she started using things like Mage Slayer, and Poison Dagger, and really cause way more problems than we had last time, or the initial time. So, okay, for what it's worth, we could destroy Sarah with Hjalmar if we wanted to, or technically we do have sufficient damage with Cyclops. Technically speaking, we don't need this Ethereal anymore. We only need this one. We could destroy this Ethereal. Yes, it's overkill damage to destroy Sarah, but Maxie is about to spam a whole bunch of spells, so getting rid of Johnny and Sarah is a very high priority. And finding a way to do that without using a special card is definitely nice, because that's a pretty nasty counter, as it would destroy every single cow and rat. I mean, yes, we can convert some of them into Ethereals, and at that point, they tank the damage with armor, which is a nice little workaround, but is not something I'm terribly thrilled about, because that could backfire on us. Okay, so I think we will do this. Yes, it's overkill damage, but it gets rid of an important unit that would have been worth a lot more than just 9 points if we had let it stick around. So I think I still stand by that. And it avoids us having to use a leader ability charge when it would have destroyed all of our 1-power units. Which is kind of the whole point of this deck, is to have a bunch of those. Top 2 cards to your deck, play one, banish the other, okay. Lacerate, I mean, that's the wide punish that's going to hurt us. I'm assuming they're going, really? I expected melee row to get rid of all the cows, but they did not do that. Got rid of the armor, yes. But now... Night Wraith, hold on. How many units do we have? 1, 2, 3, 4. That's 5, spawns in 2 more, that's 6 and 7. And when we destroy this Night Wraith, it'll spawn in 2 more, which will fill the row. So that's kind of what I was getting at, where we're reaching the point where it might be too many units. I mean, you could make the case for deliberately using a leader ability charge in that case. Use a Masterful Thunder, get rid of this Whisper Dolbothana, and that way you can destroy some 1-power rats and fine-tune exactly how much board space you do or do not want to have. I think that might actually be what we're doing. Galaxy Brain approach, dare I say.
Silence.
But I think it's still going to work for this one. But then it's going to fill this row, and as we saw previously, if the row is full and you try to use the Ethereal ability, it bricks Ethereal. It does not have enough room to spawn in. It will just still destroy the rat, though, and then this Ethereal will lose its order ability. So that means that it is just completely stopped in its tracks. So that's why we actually, in this case, would want to use a spell. And we were saying we wanted to get rid of these guys to shut them off. It hits us hard, yes, and it does at that point mean that Ethereal is now at an 8, but I think that is still on net worth doing, so we could, on our next turn, use Night Wraith and still create more copies of stuff for Ethereal to turn into. Okay. Playing a special card, potentially. It's another Lacerate. We know they're going range row, right? Boost an allied unit and give it the defender status. So fortunately, we got rid of their high priority cards early. Otherwise, that defender would have been a problem. Problem is that now, I mean, yes, we set up a lot of good stuff early, but then they pulled out a bunch of counters, and we've sort of been able to work around those, but it's starting to add up. It is starting to add up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 when we spawn in the rats. So again, it will fill the row once we consume that or destroy that Night Wraith. Which, I mean, at this point, I don't think we can play any more games with triggering this Mage Slayer. I think it needs to stop now. So in that case, I think we will deliberately not play Night Wraith range row. I think we will instead go something like Harpy Egg. Yes, it's still Death Wish, and we can benefit from destroying it. It will spawn in a Harpy afterward, which means it will take up more space. It will be a 6-power unit, which means we won't really want to convert that into an Ethereal. But we might then still have room to sneak in a Werecat after that and get the damage from that. And Dark Ray Shadow, thanks for the follow. Hope you're enjoying the stream. Yeah, I mean, I had my doubts about us taking on this enemy Then I saw the hand and thought, you know what, maybe it is possible. Then they started pulling off all of their numerous counterplays, and it did not look all that good for us, but maybe we can still make it work. Oh, how many lacerates do you have? How many stinking lacerates do you have? What the heck? Hold on. 1, 2, 3. 3 lacerates, which is the single best card to counter what we are doing. At least in multiplayer Gwents. Then if you're talking about cards that are specific to Rogue Mage, like Poison Dagger, just destroying an enemy unit altogether. Obviously, this getting rid of our strongest card was a pretty big deal as well. Oh, goodness. Wow. Wow. Okay. Well, I mean, we can not getting much value out of playing or destroying Werecat at this point. Catechin, slightly better in that case, although to destroy it with a Ethereal means we're losing 2 points to spawn in a 3-point Ekimara. I mean, okay, it's net 1 positive, but that still doesn't feel great. Takes up more board space. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Just trying to see if we needed to get rid of you for any reason. Could we do that? I think we're still waiting for a more important card, or just doing that at the end. So obviously we'll use Germain. And I think it might be Catechin still. I think it's Catechin. Then it's probably Night Wraith this Catechin, maybe still Werecat after that, and not sure what we're going to do with Night Wraith because we might not have room. We're going to try to play Hjalmar at/near the end so that we can maximize his damage, but this is not looking great. Oh, I forgot you spawn in Catechin, or rather an Ekimara immediately as well. But, okay, so as we were saying, that was a net negative point play to spawn in the Ethereal, but because we also got a 3-point Ekimara in total, net 1 positive point. But now this row is full, so that means we need to be careful. We can no longer use Ethereal at 4 points. It's not all that helpful anyway, but that means that's why we might not be able to use Night Wraith. It might clog us too much, or it might be our very last card and just won't spawn in all the rats. We're off cooldown, which is a scary thought. Okay. Who's your defender now? Defender in each row. I mean, there are more units in this row, but they all have armor. So Werecat is not super helpful. But I think we do it just because we're trying to delay Hjalmar. Wait, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We do have enough room for playing everything. Okay. So in that case, we won't. Even with Germain, we'll completely fill our row. We could, technically speaking, destroy this Harpy with Ethereal to make room if we absolutely needed to, but it's a negative 4-point play just to make board space, so I'd rather not have to resort to doing that. But if my math is correctly, double check. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, we have enough room. I mean, knowing them, they'll probably destroy some of these 1-power units, and then we won't have to worry about the board space at that stage, but well, you got rid of all of our boosts, so it's not really a threat anymore. And oh, right, we put on the curse to give everyone 1 armor. At first, I was like, wait, did they get a version of Raven's armor or something? Did we give them an artifact in their starting deck? No. So I think it is still probably Werecat because we want to play Hjalmar as late as possible to maximize his damage. So that doesn't really do much for us. We have no boosts, so this is just quite literally a 0-point order ability here. Spawn wargs and boost units. I mean, that's the kind of card we'd like to have, is boost everything on the board. So we can use Germain here and still have enough room to finish with Hjalmar. We can't really use a special, because if we did, we'd take 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 damage, or really 12 damage because we'll have the armor from these guys, but I mean, it's technically a very small net positive if we were to use Masterful Thunder. So if we felt the urgent need... Oh, actually, I don't know, though. Order of operations wise, does this happen, or rather, does this happen before this happens? Because if this happens first, then you destroy all of our 1-power units. That means that those will get damaged, but they will not get boosted. So then the equation probably does not work in our favor. So I don't know. I think we probably just flat out cannot use the special gear. So let's use Hjalmar, and at this point, he should have enough damage to almost completely destroy Triss. He's going to drop her down to like a 3 or something. So that is worth a lot. But the problem is, we are still looking at just a 7-point lead. Just against an elite enemy. That's oh, and they just didn't use this. They just did not use this order ability, which now technically is worth 2 points because they can remove 1 from us and gain 1 on their side. Oh dear. So that means they need 5 points in their finisher. They don't have leader ability, but I mean, surely their last card is worth at least 5 points, right? I think we have to take the chance. I think we have to use Masterful Cleanse, otherwise we are guaranteed to lose. Thunder, instead of any chance of being a net positive. I mean, if we were going to use an ability, we... on one hand, we probably want... I mean, more units on the board means we're taking more damage, but we're also receiving more boosts. Again, it's largely a matter of what happens first. The damage from Mage Slayer or the boost from Masterful Cleanse. If we go first, it's definitely a net positive. If they go first, well, we are just about breaking even here, because we'll tank some of the damage with armor, but we will lose 1, 2, 3, 4 units. So, I mean, we have to, because there's no other way we can win. I'm pretty sure we just have to. Okay, the boost does happen first, thankfully, which means we now have an 11-point lead, which I feel a little bit better about. So, what's their last card? Ooh, that's big. Oh my goodness. We are cutting it close, aren't we? We are cutting it close, aren't we? Oh, dearie me. Okay. Well, we can either transform an allied unit into a random one every 2 turns, which is actually kind of nice when we have a bunch of low power cars, which we are generally doing with all of our units spawning. Or we can upgrade MEVE. Actually not thrilled about this initial upgrade. On one hand, yes, getting more units on the board is nice to give more stuff for MEVE to boost, especially if you're playing MEVE late and you haven't had much chance to get those units on the board. But, alright, no, I guess especially if you're playing MEVE early and you haven't had much time to get units on the board. On the other hand, as we've seen, we've done a pretty good job of flooding our board with units. That has not been that difficult at this point. And if anything, I would prefer to either increase the value of the boosts or increase the frequency of the boosts. The spawning is not as significant. So, I mean, this is a better treasure. Of the various treasures, it's probably in the top half in terms of ones we would like to see. Probably better than what we got with the armor, but I mean, there is the chance of maybe getting subsequent key card upgrades. We had said that the board does not look great for attempting another elite battle, but maybe we take our chances. I think that is... it's definitely the higher risk play. That was a solid treasure that we passed up. So short term, it is definitely the worst option. Long term, it might be better. I partially did it because I'm curious to see what this next upgrade does. Okay, so still spawn volunteer on both sides every 2 turns. Yeah, so next upgrade would increase the frequency of MEVE's ability triggering. So that feels substantially better at this point compared to just spawning in more units, because as we were saying, we've found ways to spawn in units pretty consistently. So we've acquired at least one that can do more of that, and we've removed some cards that destroy units. Alright, so now we're going straight into another battle here, and we blew through a decent bit of energy there. Well, then again, some energy, maybe not quite as much as we would normally expect from an elite battle, because Maxi is sort of an anti-energy usage character, but alright. We would like to have a fairly straightforward enemy here. Slave capture. I don't remember him very much. I think we've seen him maybe once, but not often. Not much. What's his deal? Whenever a unit appears in the enemy row with at least 5 other units. Gross. What? He also counters us. I hate that. Whenever a unit appears on the enemy row with at least 5 other units, obviously that's going to be the case almost immediately for us, because our whole thing is spawning in a whole bunch of units. Lock the unit that gets spawned in, and damage it by 3. Don't care that much about the lock, because for the most part we're spawning in units that are, you know, like 1 power rats. But damaging it by 3 means it's just going to get destroyed, so that's not good. And that, I'm pretty sure, would eventually shut down Ethereal. I mean, initially, yes, it could work, but... So I think Ethereal is tough. We do have Ethereal and MEVE, which is... Those are the 2 key cards we were saying... I mean, you're the key card. Those are the 2 good cards we were saying we wanted to build around in the previous fight. You got immediately answered. You almost became a big factor for us. Probably still helped us get the win there, but... How do we play around this? I think we need to consume, right? At least a bit. Otherwise, we're just gonna get stuck. That's a serious problem. Normally, Night Wraith is good to help us spawn in more units. I mean, I imagine if we spawn in multiple units simultaneously, as we do with Night Wraith, that triggers on all of them. It's not like it only locks and damages the first one by 3, it locks and damages all of them by 3. If it only gets the first one, then we can do things like play Night Wraith, and at least some of the rats will survive, but I kind of doubt that. So I think we kind of need to dump you. These would be the cards we'd normally like to have, but I really think we need consumption here, and there is Lizard. Okay, so I think this is really important. This is going to be really important to help limit the number of cards we have in a row. Otherwise, we are going to just get stuck once we get to 5 units in a row. So I think we will still play MEVE as early as possible, and for what it's worth, spawning in those volunteers now means we are just triggering that ability more quickly. But we'll play you here.
It's war you want, then war you shall have.
So the leader ability alone is a huge factor, but I don't remember what cards he has. Boost whenever we gain a status, which means that, you know, we're potentially going to get a lot of locks here. So I mean, on one hand, if we wanted to test, we could use Germain and see what happens. But he is a great way to guarantee that that's gonna trigger. So I think it has to be Slizzard first, and don't have great options to consume, I guess. Harpy Egg, and to a lesser extent Catechin, because we don't really want to spawn in all that stuff. Ethereal is just going to be really hard to make that work. I mean, we could play you somewhere where you can convert one of the volunteers to an Ethereal. And that's technically still a +7. I mean, that's something. Obviously, we don't want to convert MEVE into an Ethereal, but... Okay. I guess it's Slizzard here. We are not actually going to play something for Slizzard to consume on this next turn, though. So we might want to go Ethereal first. So we don't want to be... We want to get Ethereal on the board, and converting into another Ethereal with this volunteer before MEVE's triggers her ability there. Otherwise, we're, rather than destroying a 7, or rather a 2-power unit for +7, we're destroying a 3-power unit for +6. Okay, so this guy, they're basically all lock-centric. You get boosted when we receive lock. You get boosted if we have a locked unit on the board. I think for the most part, when we get a locked unit, it's going to get immediately destroyed, so I don't think you're a huge problem. You will be, though. So now we do this. And convert you. And MEVE will trigger here, and we don't have that many units to benefit from this, but of course, it's kind of the whole point, is that we would like to do that, but our opponent is very much preventing us from doing so. Do not lock MEVE. You're going to lock MEVE. I mean, we'll take it. We probably didn't have many more cards we could realistically put there next to Ethereal. I actually do like Cyclops, though. That helps us reduce the number of cards, which, again, normally is not something we want to do. That's normally the opposite of what we want to do. But against this opponent specifically, it is kind of useful. And that might even be worth considering. I mean, it's serious overkill damage on Ethereal. But it could get rid of one of their engines and limit the number of cards in this row. Don't love it. Think we'll wait until they get bigger / see if there's another card that is going to be more of a point slam. I mean, these are gonna, how many cards they have left? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So yeah, you're gonna at least get up to 10 by the end. So that is, by that account, 10 points of damage for what will eventually be a 10-point unit, and sort of limits board space to a certain extent, which is actually what we're trying to do. So that you could justify this, is what I'm saying. Even if it doesn't look great initially, you could still justify it, but it's not urgent. We'll do this. It's going to spawn in another Ekimara, which, again, we don't love spawning in units. Yes, it's usually what we're looking for with MEVE, but we're going to probably consume you guys as well. How many copies of that do they have? You can usually only have 2 in multiplayer Gwent, but yeah, I thought I remembered. Thought I vaguely remembered that this guy, we'd seen it before, and he had a bunch of hunting packs. So, is it at least 5 other units? So does that mean once the 6th unit enters, that's when it gets locked? In which case, we can still play one more card here safely, as long as we don't spawn in other stuff, and we can spawn in a few more cards here. So, do Harpy Egg. We play one card, consume it, it creates another card, so we'll stay on 4 units in this row. I think we can still do that for now. But we've now probably done all the unit spawning that we can afford to do, and from here on out it's just going to be Slizzard creating more space for us by eating these guys as much as possible. And then we can, Cyclops can create a little more room for us, and technically Cyclops on Harpy would be nice, because we could use that damage to destroy this Thirsty Dame. And yeah, we'd said maybe it was going to be Cyclops on Ethereal to get rid of you, because you would eventually get even bigger, but we can decide later which approach we'd like to take. That's more lock. Don't lock MEVE, but you're going to lock MEVE. Why are you... Okay, I mean, thank you. That Ethereal wasn't going to do anything at all anymore, so I do appreciate that. But now... So MEVE is going to trigger on this turn, which means we might want to play something that we are actually not going to consume. And we get one more turn. Basically, we can, what, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. We can safely put one more unit on each row. And we'd like to be right at that limit when MEVE's ability triggers. I mean, we'll be 1 unit shy of that number, but basically the only thing we can do that can increase the number of cards in a row without exceeding the 5 unit threshold would be Werecat. But we do eventually want to consume it, so we will put it here. Even if those guys have armor. I mean, you guys do too. There's the MEVE boost. More lock. I mean, eventually they're going to get MEVE. Yeah. Alright, so at least we got a few rounds of MEVE boosts off. And that has been enough to give us a decent advantage at this stage. So I think what we'll do here is we will consume things other than the Werecat, and then we'll try to finish by consuming the Werecat. And that way we give them more time to play more units so we can maximize the damage out of that Werecat. So let's just eat some of these guys to make more room before we hit that 6-card threshold. Except the problem is, yeah, we can't really do that. You guys all exceed it. Cyclops is the only way we don't exceed it. And if we use Cyclops, obviously we need to destroy something. We don't really care about going wide anymore because MEVE has been locked. 7 is not quite enough to destroy either of you, unfortunately. And it could have been if we also went Werecat on this turn, but I didn't anticipate we were going to use Cyclops. So does that mean we're going overkill with an ethereal hit? Or are we testing to see if everything gets locked and damaged? Or if it's just the very first unit? I imagine it's all of them. I think we need to delay that as much as possible. I think we are doing this. It is overkill, as we said, a little bit, but technically that guy was gonna get up to about a 10 or 11, so it's actually not nearly as big overkill as it might have appeared. I hate the fact that you are putting units on our side of the board. I hate that. Yeah, well, I mean, we were gonna exceed the threshold on this turn no matter what. Unless we potentially could even make a case. I don't remember if you can do this in Rogue Mage, actually, let's see. In multiplayer Gwent, it's possible to play a card directly into your graveyard, and by doing so, basically discard it and just not play anything on a turn, which is, in this case, might actually be the best possible strategy here, because if we play a unit and it gets locked and damaged, well, mostly if it gets locked, that means that you get boosted. And if it's just one card that gets locked, then it's not a huge deal. But if every single cow that your main spawns gets locked, then that is a ton of boosts on you, and that is not something we want to see. So that concerns me. But there's no way around it, it doesn't seem, because we can't discard you. We are not allowed to. So I think we just, plain and simple, we just have to. We have no choice in the matter. Yeah, everything gets locked. Everything gets locked. Okay, this is gonna be bad in that case. This is not gonna be good. We are not gonna use Jermaine's ability because that would just feed this Thirsty Dame more points. We're gonna continue to lock and maybe go after Jermaine, but as I just said, we don't really want to use him. That stinks. That's a problem, because that was the only way we could continue to at least get one card played without you know, triggering all this stuff. So I think what we're gonna do here is, yes, we are again forced to play you. That will trigger on all of you and give you boosts. The question is, are we gonna need to do something to get additional points with a spell at the end, or is this gonna be sufficient? They can steal a locked card. You need to get destroyed. There is no way around it, because if you steal a 20-point Slizzard, you win. Without question. So this needs to happen. And that means can't do anything else spell-wise on this turn, and I mean, it's a 20-point lead, thankfully. So hopefully that means we're fine. Against, again, what was turned out to be a pretty nasty encounter. This is a decent finisher for them. This is gonna be close. Okay. Whew. It's fine. It's fine. The margin of every match in this run has been a little closer. A little closer than I would generally like it to be. Destroying the highest power unit on the battlefield, which is reasonably likely to be our opponent's card. Because for the most part, we have a bunch of weak cards that we are slowly building up over time with MEVE. Ethereal is high enough that it could potentially hit Ethereal. It's a little bit concerning. Is there anything else? I mean, Slizzard if we do what we just did and consume a bunch of stuff. could hit that. In that case, you can play Villain Treadmirth on your very last turn, and it won't have time to trigger, so that is one way to potentially work around destroying your own card, but let's see what we can get rid of. I mean, yes, we were just saying that Slizzard, for me specifically, is counterproductive, because we want to maximize the number of units on the board, not minimize them. On the other hand, we have seen, as was the case in that previous encounter, sometimes where, depending on what our opponent's ability is, we might really want to have something like a Slizzard. So I think, and Botchling, either damaging or boosting 1 unit every turn. I think we probably still want Villain Treadmirth. We'll have to be a little careful how we use it, but I think we want it.
To herd sapient beings like cattle, abominable.
The fact that Alzer had that comment, maybe that means we haven't faced that enemy before. Alright, and if we go to this battle, we are locked into going the northern route, which means no elite battles, fair number of normal battles, just 1 place of power? 2 if we go down here. I think we can still do that. It's not a terrible path, then. Still no elite battles, though. I mean, that may or may not be something we wanted to. But, then... alternatively... if we were to go the southern route, we could nab this place of power. This place... I mean, if we want to just maximize places of power, that's the way to do it. You can go here. You can go here. Basically, an orange rather than a green. This is what boosts, and this is remove. Or strengthen and remove. Still go down here to grab this, or you could go this way if you really wanted to. Technically speaking, you could still get an elite battle if you did that. But if you go the southernmost route, that is the easiest way to double down on elites if we really felt inclined to do that, which with so many close calls, I am not particularly inclined to go that route, so I think we might actually do the northern route. I did not initially think that was going to be the plan, but I think I've been convinced otherwise. I think we go here, 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 here is the plan. But what is this event? So the tricks... have we seen this before? I think once. A Sylvan sitting on a stone near the road asks you if you'd like to play a game. I'll ask you a question, a sort of riddle if you'd like, and if you answer correctly, I'll give you inspiring loot. I don't remember what that does. But if you answer incorrectly, we give you Raven's armor. I mean, as we've said, Raven's armor, I mean, yeah, it's been a small benefit to us, but it is taking up 1 spot on one of our rows, which is not great. So it's not amazing. I don't know how difficult this riddle is, but I mean, maybe we give it a shot, because the downside is not that bad, and upside hopefully is useful to us, so let's see. Sylvan smiles, excellent. You'll smell them long before you see them. What am I? Rot Fiend, Full Test Pride, Sentry and Spellweaver. It's pretty easy. Full Test Pride is a siege engine. I assume that's not particularly smelly. Sentry and Spellweaver is a mage. I mean, I don't know. When's the last time you showered? Rot Fiend is a rotting monster. It's probably Rot Fiend. And I understood that reference. Haha! It's an achievement. I didn't even know, but we'll take it. All right. Rats, you're correct. Thought I had you there. As promised, your treasure. You gain inspiring loot. I would have loved if we could have seen what that was beforehand, but hey, we have added a card to our deck. I assume that it's treasure. Boost all copies of an allied unit by 5. Oh! I mean, if we have a lot of rats, a lot of cows, or even ethereals on the board, this would be a solid finisher for us. There are certainly times when it would not be great if we are not able to set up any of those types of units. I mean, even then, worst case scenario, it's a 5, right? Which is not very good. But there have been times, like in that previous encounter, where we've had worse. And should, with some regularity, be able to get at least 10, and with deliberate setup, should be able to get, 15, 20, 25 even, so I think it's a good addition. It is not a passive. It's a card that we'll sometimes draw into, sometimes not, so not sure when we'll actually see it in a match. But I think, at least in theory, it's a good pickup. So let's head down to this battle now. Angered Treant. I don't remember him very well. Let's see. Symbiosis, which means that when they play a nature card, they'll spawn a Wandering Treant on the board, which is a 1 power unit. So they're also kind of flooding the board with weak power units, much like we are. Set its power equal to the number of Symbiosis cards that you control. So if they play other units that also have Symbiosis, the power of the Treants that get spawned in increases. So there's some reason to have some damaging options to shut those down if they do spawn in a bunch of Symbiosis. We do have Ethereal, which we just said might be useful if we can combine that with that loot. And we'd like to combine it with stuff that can spawn in weak units, which Catachan can sort of do. Harpy Egg can kind of do. Werecat, I mean, it's not great. I think we'll probably dump Cyclops here. MEVE is a good pickup. We are looking for the spawning here, though. We've very minor spawning. Maybe we dump Werecat, to be honest. And there is the loot. Okay, so I think Ethereal is going to be the go-to target for the loot. But let's probably still lead off with MEVE here.
The morrow shall bring a better day.
I mean, it means we have 2 volunteers at the very least. Could use those. But, I mean, high-end Ethereal is definitely, one would assume, best-case scenario. Okay, so that's a Symbiosis card. So we'd like to get rid of that if we can, but we... granted, we got rid of basically our only source of damage when we... not our only source of damage. When we destroyed, or mulliganed, that Cyclops. If it has Vitality, it'll get boosted by 1 as well, so... If they have Vitality, I mean, there are some nature cards that give Vitality, so that might end up happening. We do have damage now with Hjalmar, though, so that is definitely a nice thing to draw into. Now my question, though, is how do we set up Ethereal? Yes, we could always go Rat Swarm, but I'd rather not if we don't have to. I think we actually go Catachan here. In the range row. It'll spawn in an Ekimar. We'll destroy Catachan with Ethereal on our next turn, which is a slight gain in terms of the Catachan itself, and it also spawns another Ekimar, which means more fodder for Ethereal. So it's not perfect, but again, we just don't quite have the ideal setup. Similarly, we could go Harpy Egg. Matron is going to boost you, which is annoying, because that will make it harder to get rid of you. Okay, that's what we want. So we'll still go Ethereal here, I think, but that might be our next play. And it did trigger your Thrive, so now it's, just a +2, but hey, we'll take it. Get another Ethereal, get some more Ekimaras, which are good options to boost up, or to swap into with Ethereal. There's MEVE's first boost. So now these Ethereals are a little more effective.
You see?
And 2 of these guys in the same row is actually really effective. Ooh. I am not sure we have room for Tremaine anymore. In this row, at least. Because as we've said previously, if we completely clog a row, Ethereal gets shut down, so we need to be kind of careful of that. So I think we're looking at Night Wraith, and probably only Night Wraith. In fact, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. When we destroy you... Drops it down to 6, we spawn in 2 more, that's 8. I think it's just enough. No, we need to get rid of one of them. That's a problem. I did the math wrong. I did, in fact, do the math wrong. At this point, we would like them to have some damage. We would like them to destroy one of our cards for us, please. That would kind of be preferable. So we can keep on using Ethereal here. Play a unit from your deck. It is a nature card, which means they'll spawn in... Ooh, they will spawn in Wandering Treant, but this is damage. Please destroy something in our range row. You did not destroy something in our range row. How dare you? I feel completely deceived. Alright, we're probably going to go Hjalmar here, just because we don't really want to play anything range row anymore. Obviously we can't, unless we just don't have a way to destroy it. Anything now, so, this should be 9 cards, because the row is full. 10, 11, 12, 13 on Hjalmar himself, which means we could destroy anything. Yes, this is the biggest card. On the other hand, it is the one thing they have on the board that could actually help us, depending on who they go after. If they continue to try to hit this Ethereal, which on one hand is the best card for them, on the other hand, if our row is full, we can't use it anyway. We'd very much like for them to get rid of some of these rats, because I underestimated how many units we would have by 1. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Germain also fills this row. Yeah, we didn't have a lot of spawning to begin with, but we drew into enough of it. Okay, so this is worth 1 point per turn. And it's kind of nasty when they have double Dryad Matron here. So I think even though it's not one of their Symbiosis cards, we'll get rid of it. So that was powerful. Okay, that's what we want. Range row, please. No, don't do it on Ethereal. Do it on anyone else. Alright, well now we don't really want to use Ethereal anyway. So, yeah. MEVE is going to trigger at the end of this turn. We could use Germain and immediately fill our melee row. On the other hand, that means we won't be able to play anything else. So if we're willing to not quite maximize MEVE on this turn, we could, rather than fill our row with 1 power cows, fill our row with slightly stronger, 3 power harpy eggs or werecats that actually have deploy abilities that are potentially gonna do 1 damage. So I think it's still this. That means what? Werecat next, Germain after that, and then our row is full. We just can't play Harpy Egg unless they destroy something. And Inspiring Loot is our finisher, I think. There's the MEVE boost. That's also potentially going to give them some damage. They're getting rid of Ethereal. I imagine they are at this one because they've been so committed to destroying it. So now we have slightly more room. Which means, I mean, we can play you, whereas we could not do that before. And I think they have way more cards in this melee row, so we are more likely to want Werecat melee row anyway. So let's, yes, put you down again. Now that they've destroyed the Ethereal that still have the Order ability, we can't spawn in more anyway, so that doesn't really matter. And at this point, with 2 Ethereals, 2 Volunteers, 2 Ekimaras, 4 Rats, so this would actually be our preferred Inspiring Loot target, and that's 20 points, so I mean, that's certainly still decent for us. So now we actually don't want them to hit the Rats. So we have the potential to have Ethereals fill this entire row. Who are they going for now, though? I mean, thank you. So now it should be Werecat, because as soon as we play Germain, he fills the row and we won't have room for Werecat. So we got, what, 3 damage, because everything else had armor in that row? Shaping Nature card, of course, and gives them a pretty big boost. They're gonna go Vitality on you, no, just... Oh, Vitality on you, that did not make a lot of sense. You don't have enough time to benefit from all that. So, now it's Germain. And this fills both rows entirely, just in time for MEVE's ability here. So, maximum MEVE in this match, which you do love to see. Morin, lock unit or damage unit, what are you going to go for? Locking MEVE, I mean, she just wasn't going to get off cooldown anyway. You should have done that way earlier. So now our finisher is this Inspiring Loot, and we have the most copies of Rat, so that's where we'll use it. And that looks pretty good. Just about the ideal setup. The one exception to that being that we did not have quite as many ethereals as we would have liked, and, you know, we did to ourselves, but still enough for us to hold on for the win. So for the most part, that's what we're looking to try to do here. Let's see. Can add a substantially weaker ethereal. No thanks. We've had enough trouble already with our significantly stronger ethereal. Damage with Banard Student, don't love it. I mean, Night Wraith is very good for flooding rows, but we've started to see that, you know what, maybe we can flood rows enough already. I think we probably keep Night Wraith and dump Harpy Egg. This is another card, of course, that spawns in stuff. It doesn't spawn as many, but it spawns in higher power cards. I mean, I think we dump you. Yeah. Obviously, Night Wraith is doing more row flooding, so when we need units, it's better. When we already have too many units, it's worse, but... Okay, so now I think energy-wise, we're actually doing okay, because that encounter we didn't use any. Might not use any in the previous encounter either. Maybe one round of it. So it's not absolutely urgent, but I mean, we could opt to, what, this one is strengthen a unit, which we could do on Ethereal if we really wanted to. Tell you what, I mean, we have Place of Power, Treasure Chest after that, so we're not going to need to spend any energy there, of course. Then I'm thinking we're going here for a battle, which we will want energy for, but I doubt we'd need 40 plus for that, so then we could restore energy here. Then one more battle, restore energy here. Then it is double battle event, battle boss, so yeah, at the end, I think that's why we had initially said we didn't love going this route. Oh, actually, one battle. We'll skip this one. Double battle boss with an event in between. Because, yeah, this is really our last chance to get a big burst of energy, and we might need to save it a bit in anticipation of the stuff we'll need to spend here before the boss fight. So, not sure how I feel about taking the upgrade versus taking the energy. So if we can get one or two more of these battles where we don't really need to spend much energy, then we're probably in good shape. If we need to spend a fair bit of energy in multiple encounters, though, then we should probably be restoring energy at all these places of power. But I do like upgrading a unit by 3, specifically for Ethereal. So of all the places of power, I forget if there was another green one, but this is probably the best option for us. So I think we'll still go for this. Because then, I mean, it does mean if we get Villain Treadmirth and Ethereal, there's pretty solid chance that Villain Treadmirth would destroy Ethereal, but I think we can live with that if it comes to it. It's getting you up to 12. If we can actually use it properly for an entire match, would be worth a ton. I mean, there's room for 9 units in a row. So, you know, that's like basically 100 points in one row from Ethereal alone. All it requires is that it doesn't get damaged much, and we don't accidentally clog the row entirely, which we've admittedly done a lot of, but Treasure Chest is next. And we're hoping for a little bit of a better answer this time. Last time we just got the armor, which was not a great fit for us. A free spell is potentially good because we have some expensive spells. Free damage, free rat spawn. Probably most likely we'd want the free Greater Cleanse to boost all of our units. That's one option, but play units from any graveyard if both graveyards are empty, spawn a containing Revenant on an allied row. I mean, yes, we like units. We like flooding the board with units. Sometimes our opponent has better units than us, so to steal one of our opponent's stronger units could be really powerful. On the other hand, playing 2 units means that takes up 2 spots on the board. And as we've said and seen, we run out of board space pretty quickly, oftentimes. So I think we might still go Traveling Priestess here. I think it's one of those situations where at the high end, this probably is better. So if we can steal one of our opponent's best cards, then that could be amazing. On the other hand, if we clog our rows or just don't have any room remaining in our rows, then this is worth 0. So that's obviously worse than Traveling Priestess. We do need room for her still, yes, but this is 1 unit versus 2 units. And then the spell is a way to, well, give us other sources of benefits, like boosting all of our existing units, which could be worth as much as 17. So I think we still go this route. And it gives us flexibility as well. And we were just saying how, given how we did not restore energy at the previous place of power, we were feeling like we needed a way to avoid spending energy at some of the upcoming battles. And yeah, I think this is the remove place of power, right? So that one's probably not as useful to us. Again, if we were going to take the upgrade approach rather than the energy approach at one of the places of power, I think that was the right one to do it at. Maybe the duplication here at this blue one, but not sure about that. Oh, and we could go up here for, this would also be an upgrade unit version. So if we don't use any energy in this battle, then we could maybe further upgrade Ethereal. It's what, 12 right now, so it'd be up to 15, which is kind of insane. But we're getting ahead of ourselves again, because first we need to address this Rune Mage. Oh yes, we've seen him once or twice. He spams all the rune stones. Oh, and this is a hard version, so I think, what, his cooldown is faster or something like that? Or is it usually just create and play a gold unit? Is it usually gold specifically, or is it just any unit usually? I feel like it's usually just any unit. So gold, that unit is potentially going to be very strong. Boosted by the number of rune stones in your graveyard, so it's going to gain power over time for that reason as well. So he's going to start out, theoretically, relatively weak and then gain power over time. We can potentially spawn in a bunch of rats with the Night Wraith, which could be the target for inspiring loot, and we would want to trigger that death blow with something. Slizzard is a way to make that happen. I mean, I would like to see MEVE, and I would like to see Ethereal here, but theoretically these things do work together. I mean, unless we get another way to destroy these Night Wraiths, we don't really want to dump the Slizzard. And that would mean we'd need either... Yeah, we really do need Slizzard. I think we are just hoping we draw into some of our bigger cards. Let's get rid of one of the Night Wraiths. Okay, we need to be careful. It can be really useful, especially toward the end of the match when they're boosting a card by the number of runestones they have in their graveyard. That could make it very big. So if we time that properly, then Villain Treadmirth could destroy a really big card, but we need to make sure it doesn't backfire and hit us, of course. And oh, Slizzard is consuming stuff every turn. And that very well could. I mean, if we just consume one Night Wraith, and just about only that, then that shouldn't be an issue. We technically could consume Villain Treadmirth if necessary. If we play it, we wait and see if they have something bigger than what we have, and if for whatever reason our cards are still bigger than their cards, we just consume Villain Treadmirth with Slizzard on our last turn to make sure we don't have this destroy one of our cards. I don't know. We'll stick with this. And we draw into MEVE. Okay, so that's great, because that was, of course, one of the other cards, the key card, that we did not have. But we would... I mean, with Villain Treadmirth, we had said before, given how much we've upgraded Ethereal, it might not be safe to play it. But we'll see.
Onward to victory!
MEVE does boost, yes, but I think as long as we focus on spawning in weak, low-powered units, and then that shouldn't be too much of an issue. That is not a good first card to play. That is a great finisher. Not a great starting card to play, though. I like that you went the boosting route, though. Okay, so there's more of the Night Wraiths, which means probably more we'll want to consume with Slizzard, but Great Oak is going to be bigger than Slizzard even after... It's going to be the same number as Slizzard after consuming 2 Night Wraiths, and Slizzard will be higher once MEVE boosts it, so... Still think eventually they're going to get some pretty big cards here, because that number of runestones to their graveyard is going to give everything a pretty big boost. So it's Slizzard next, then it's going to be Night Wraith, immediately consume it, just in time for MEVE's ability to power it up. Speaking of Night Wraiths. So if they played these in the opposite order, it would have been far more effective. But also, let's potentially, again, if we have a really highly boosted card, one that is the highest on the board that would get destroyed by Villain Tredenmirth, we could either destroy Villain Tredenmirth with Cyclops, or destroy that highly boosted card, and it would probably be overkill damage. But if, you know, it's a 12-point Slizzard versus an 11-point Great Oak, we could then destroy Slizzard, and I mean, then I guess we're still hoping that they have the next highest card in that case, but we'll see. We'll see. We just need to be always keeping an eye on what this would be set to destroy. But right now, it's this. Because that means MEVE has lots of stuff to boost up here. And she does not boost herself, which is kind of nice in this case, because that means we're not at risk of Villain Tredenmirth destroying her, although then again, it's be on our very last turn, I think, when we'd use this anyway, so it's not like it's about to be a huge factor. Because MEVE gains value over time, and by the end of the match, she's already done her thing for the most part. So now I think we go Night Wraith here and consume that, yeah? And that means that Rats will very likely be the card that we are going to boost up with Inspiring Loot, which is definitely a good thing because they're not that powerful, so we're not really risking that those become Villain Tredenmirth targets. I mean, it only destroys the single highest power card. If they're all tied for the highest, then that's not going to destroy them all simultaneously. Not to mention that, you know, some of these got boosted by MEVE and others have not yet gotten boosted by MEVE, so they're not tied anyway. But yeah, so that's a lot of Rats. It's what, like 7? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 as things currently stand. So that would be good for Inspiring Loot, and as things appear, it does not appear as though we're going to get any more. It's just a coincidence that they keep on getting cards that we have in our hand. Night Wraiths, Catechins. What did they just do? They got rid of one of our cards. It was not Slizzard. I mean, ooh. Werecat here is worth a lot. I mean, it does weaken Great Oak and make it more likely that that is not going to be the Villain Tredenmirth target, which is a little risky. Oh, well, you're 15 right now. So, you know, I mean, we would eventually like to consume you with Slizzard, but we can wait to see if that needs to happen. We would also like to put Catech in there, but I think we can probably wait on that. And yeah, it means we probably won't have room for the Ekimaras unless we start consuming Rats, but it's not really something we want to do. Well, we'll play it by ear a little bit. I think we're willing to reduce the number of units that get spawned in this row slightly, if that is the case. If it is the difference between us having the highest unit and not having the highest unit, because we would be tied for 15 if we did this. I mean, you are, and we want to make sure you still have dominance here, I think. I mean, we would be tied for dominance, so you could still consume. Yeah, it's... We'll wait, though. We'll wait, though, until you potentially get more units in this row. And when we potentially configure this Thrive. Okay, so they do consume, not a very big card, so you're just 18. We would have liked you to have gotten higher to make sure this was guaranteed to be the biggest unit. Don't love that. Fortunately, we already destroyed their Rats with Werecat, but that was... I mean, we are potentially going to destroy more stuff in the future. It takes 6 damage to get rid of you. Yeah. So Cyclops is not a great option. Hjalmar... And we probably have enough to destroy this Great Oak, right? And we don't want to destroy their biggest card or damage their biggest card because we need Villain Tredenmirth to have that be the target. But 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 should have enough damage to destroy Great Oak, especially 12 with Hjalmar. So second highest unit should still be safe for us to go after here, I think. We could do that. We could also... I mean, it is about to be MEVE triggering here. As we were saying, I don't think Catechin is really going to work in this range row, despite us usually wanting to consume it. So, might just go melee row where there's a little more space. Hold on. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. We have just enough space. Okay. As long as we don't trigger this Death Wish, but if we do, then that creates a spot anyway. So we maximize number of cards on the board here at the moment so that MEVE gets more value on this boost. Runestone here. Okay, I would like for you to not... They have a ton of Death Wish. And Consumption, which I don't really know where that's coming from. It just seems odd to me. So it's not obvious why the Rune Mage would inherently be trying to lean into that archetype. But, I mean, also, yeah, this is going to boost up the Brand Warrior when we destroy something, but... I mean, we could Cyclops for 7 and destroy you. Let's actually do that. Yes, it's going to spawn in an Ekimara, but since we're getting rid of a card to do that, should mean we have just enough space. Because otherwise that was going to get boosted from this play right here, it was going to get boosted from Hjalmar, and it was going to get boosted from Villain Trentonmirth as well. And even Slizzard if we do eventually choose to use that more. Okay, PFI. This is what I mean. They're getting some pretty big boosts from that. So we don't want to destroy you, because if we do, you get summoned back out. So, although technically speaking, we may have enough damage with Hjalmar to consider... Well, actually, if we can weaken you substantially without destroying you, that might be worth doing. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. It is exactly enough to destroy you. Darn. Could go after you, so you are potentially still going to get a little bit bigger. We do also need to make sure that we play Villain Trentonmirth with enough time to activate here, which should be the case if we play him on our next turn. We can't play him last, though, otherwise he doesn't have time. So, we do that. It's a little bit overkill, but as we said, don't really want to go after you. Definitely don't go after you, otherwise Villain Trentonmirth will backfire on us. They do have the lead, for what it's worth, but MEVE will still give us some more boost. This is going to be worth a lot, and this is worth a fair bit as well. And then we should still be able to, if we absolutely need to, use greater Masterful Cleanse, if necessary. So now this needs to be Villain Trentonmirth. And... so, I mean, we would like to consume you, but that gets us up to 19, which means we are definitely the tallest unit, and we don't want that. Unless you're going to play something even bigger, in which case we can consider it, but don't need to make up our mind just yet. Next turn we, of course, will. So what is this? Is it bigger than a 19? You do not control more units than us, so you will not get a big boost there. They will have their leader ability. Oof. That's not good, because that's going to be worth a lot. Okay, so we can't really consume with Slizzard, otherwise we get up to 21 and we have the highest unit. You'll get destroyed, so we want to not consume, so the Villain Trentonmirth destroys this 18. And if we use Inspiring Loot, the rats are at the highest going to be 9s, that's fine. Villain Trentonmirth won't mess with them. Even if we go Greater Cleanse, you'd be the highest unit at 15 on our side, but Vargas is still higher, so Villain Trentonmirth still hits you. Okay, so we do this. This is the card we have the most copies of, right? Yeah. So that is a good finisher. And this will be as well. Do we feel the need? Do we feel the need for Masterful Thunder, or can we save the energy here? So this is going to be, what, an 18-point play? The problem is, not only are they playing this card from hand, they're also going leader ability. And it's really hard to predict how much that's going to be worth. That is really hard to predict. We are going to take 1 damage on this volunteer with the lead, for what it's worth. I think we still take our chances. This is already a fairly big lead, and it's going to get bigger. Okay, so there goes their biggest card. What do they get here? Witch Apprentice doesn't have much time to get boosted, so that's not a big threat. It will get a little bit boosted. But this is the problem. Istrid also gets more powerful over time, but that is still a lot of base power. Alright, we're good. We're good. No energy needed. So you'd love to see that. And there we saw how Villain Trentonmirth can be very powerful, yes, but we just need to be careful how we use it. So let's see. I used Istrid, and we could potentially get Istrid here. Gives us some consistency, which is nice, because we don't really have much in the way of that right now. We've removed cards on a few occasions, so our deck is not that big, and that's our best source of consistency here. It's just that we've removed some of our weaker cards. Dandelion is also a consistency tool. Does also help us go wide a little bit because it's a free 4-power unit on the board, and then we draw into something and can play whatever we draw into, or something that's already in our hand. So that's, both of them could work. Cyclops is a card that removes other units, so it's kind of anti-MEVE, but on the other hand, as we've said several times before, or at least once or twice before, you know, maybe having a little bit of that is still good, because otherwise we do tend to clog our rows completely, which is partially why I'm a little reluctant to commit to either of these guys here. I mean, we could get rid of Werecat. It exists. It's a card that we kind of want to destroy, but it's not a super high priority. The Thrive is usually not a big factor. Honestly, might get rid of Werecat. Because, I mean, again, getting rid of our less important cards does increase our consistency and just make it more likely that we draw into the things we do want, like MEVE, the loot, Ethereal, probably Villain Tread and Mirth, though, as we were saying, we just need to be mindful of how we're using it. I think we dump it. I think we actually dump it. If we had the Magnifying Spyglass, then we definitely wouldn't have needed to have done that, but...
These runes, however obscure, it's a curious branch of occult inquiry. No match for the high art, though.
Alright. If you say so, Alzer. So now, this is... we're probably still taking energy from this one here, because we are either looking at... what, if we go to one of these, one battle... probably dropping down here. This is duplicate. Technically speaking, we can duplicate Ethereal because it's not a key card, and I believe it carries over the base power increase we've given it, so getting 2 12-point Ethereals is kind of an intriguing thought. Could further increase its base power here if we're willing to sacrifice the energy. The opportunity cost of not taking energy, at least. So we didn't have to use energy in that battle. But then... we don't take energy here. That's one battle. Might try to duplicate a card if we're really greedy there. That'd mean one more battle. Yeah, that's a lot of battles before the boss fight without restocking on energy. We should probably make a point of restocking on energy. We should probably do that. Yeah, I'm gonna go here so I don't tempt myself to upgrade Ethereal further. Also, at that point, Ethereal at 15 power, although that sounds fantastic, it makes it that much more likely that Villain Tread and Mirth would just destroy it, and so, you know, if we get a whole bunch of 15 power Ethereals, then okay, maybe that's not a huge deal, but could remove a card, but I think we're just taking the energy here. And then we can see, you know, if we do this battle and it feels like if we didn't need to use energy here, then we could potentially still opt, or we could even go here, which technically gives us a little more flexibility with where we go next. I mean, I doubt we're about to go Elite Battle, though there is a Place of Power after it. I mean, there's Place of Power here anyway, so that's a much safer one. I guess we'd go this one, but if we don't have to use much energy here, then we can potentially still duplicate our Ethereal. So this guy is, what, Assimilate, right? Thought I remembered that. Play the bottom card from your opponent's deck. Yeah, cooldown 3. Okay, I'm pretty sure there's a hard version of this guy, and this is not it, thankfully. So there is Ethereal, the 12-power version of it. We have both Germain and Night Wraith, and Ethereal, all of which are ways to help create copies of Ethereal, but Catechin, which is all ways to create additional copies of Ethereal. As we've said many times before, if we are not careful, we will clog a row and shut it down. But maybe we go Ethereal and... Don't think we need all these guys. Germain is probably too much. If we go with Germain to set up Ethereal, that's probably all we can afford to put in that row. Otherwise, we are going to fill it. If we go Catechin plus Night Wraith, that might be good enough. Although these are the ones that tend to cause us problems because I always get it off by 1 unit, it seems. We don't really want to consume Germain himself. It's the other thing. Whereas these guys, we do want to consume the base card. So, although Germain is really strong, I think we're actually getting rid of him here. Okay. Now, Slizzard, I also don't remember exactly how this guy tends to use his Assimilate. He's playing cards from our graveyard, yes, which will trigger Assimilate, which is an effect that boosts their units whenever... Or any card that has Assimilate gets boosted by 1 when they play a card that is not from their starting deck. So by playing something from our deck, it triggers Assimilate. But I think we'll start here still. Still go Range Row because we have 1 more spot for it since we don't have Raven's Armor taking up that spot. Then it's Ethereal. Ooh. I mean, if you're going to poison a Deathwish card, or give bleed to a Deathwish card. Alright, so, so the thing is... I was not anticipating that we were going to have to, wait. Oh, bottom card from deck. For some reason, I thought that was graveyard. I know we've read this a bazillion times, but no, deck. So it does mean we were not going to draw into Villain Treadmirth, but they stole it. As things currently stand, it would destroy Mutated Hounds, which is kind of nice. I was going to play Ethereal on this turn, though, and that would become the highest card, and that is the very combo we were saying we needed to be careful of. So I think that means we need to play something that is smaller than a 4, so we will go Harpy Egg here. And we will put it in the row where we will eventually use Ethereal. So this will destroy you. I think, yeah, will destroy you at the end of the turn. This is an Assimilate, well, now it was an Assimilate engine that has been destroyed by Villain Treadmirth, so that actually was an even better card for us to destroy. We do draw into Germain, which we had some concerns about, but I think now it is time where we can use Ethereal, spawn in more units, and let's just not play anything else in this row for a little while, okay? Okay, that's another Assimilate card, so we'd like to get rid of this one as well, which we could potentially do. We will definitely do with Traveling Priestess and go overkill damage to destroy one of you guys. Cyclops can also give us damage. So let's do this. And as I said, we're going to leave this row alone for a while because it is getting very full, and we don't want to mess with the Ethereals. So let's go Traveling Priestess here, and we shut down the Assimilate cards before they get so high that we can no longer destroy them. Because that gets rid of both of them. No energy needed. So, great use for Traveling Priestess. Yeah, those cards weren't very big yet, but they were both engines that were going to get stronger on this very turn, because they're about to use their leader ability to play a card from our deck. And what is it going to be this time? That is a really strong Assimilate card, because that's Assimilate 2. So Glynis gets boosted by 2 every time they play a card that's not from their deck. But we can destroy her as well with Yalmar here, which I think is honestly what we are about to do, because either that or what we need. 9. I mean, technically we could destroy an Ethereal, but in order to do that, we'd need to fill this row, which is something we don't want to do. So I think it's Yalmar. It's overkill, but this is potentially their strongest engine. So it is still worth doing. Still have room for the Ethereals. And so for once, maybe Ethereal will actually be the recipient of Inspiring Loot, as we once dreamed that it might be. We could also break out Slizzard here if we are concerned about running out of space. Okay, they create a 12-point Ethereal, which they actually can use on a Night Wraith, which does make sense. I mean, they aren't going to have enough room to continue to do that, because they're going to get blocked by their leader here. unless they play more stuff there, but now we could tell you, wait, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, if we play one more unit in this row, it is full, as we were saying before, except Cyclops destroys a unit. Right, so it still stays at 8. So I was thinking we use Ethereal here, but it has the 2 armor. I'm gonna say we use Cyclops to shut down their Ethereal, but we cannot. Alas, we cannot. Could use Lizard to consume these Ethereals that have already done their thing and consume the one in particular that has the poison on it so that it hopefully does not get completely removed. Just absorb that power into this Lizard. I think we might do that. Because basically, yes, it is a unit in this row which does temporarily fill the row, but because we can consume a card every turn, that is not going to remain the case for long. Okay, packs. If you boost that, that's actually really smart, and they do. Okay, so now, before we use this, we consume you. So no more poison, and we can still do this. And it also means if we want, well, I mean, now you're definitely too big for us to go after you with Cyclops. Even Slizzard is not big enough to do that, somewhat surprisingly. And yes, obviously we said before that we would like to have gotten Germain earlier, but we had so many units that we were going to flood with already that that did not really make a big difference. And if Cyclops is not trying to get rid of the Ethereal, then I don't know what it is going to try to do. I think we're just going Catechin here. Okay, they are making a point of playing cards next to Ethereal, so that is smart. But they will never be able to get to these rats, which is why... Oh, not me! Okay, that is going to be our Cyclops target.
We will never bow to the invader.
That is immediately our Cyclops target. So we need 11 points of damage, which means an Ethereal is sufficient. So again, this does mean we're playing a unit in this row, but that is fine because we're going to get rid of a unit by doing this and remove a very important card for them. So that is fine. Then we do this. I mean, it does mean we are still reducing our total number of Ethereals, which does mean the Inspiring Loot is not going to be quite as effective as we would have hoped that it would become. But we can do... We could do that and make more space if we really needed to. Yes, we will. Then... Alright, we already played a card this turn. Assassination, is it going to be on you? I mean, we had enough armor that was not a huge play. This is still a +4. It's not amazing for us, but it's okay. It is still a net positive play. We will not consume any Ethereals from this point onward because we don't need the board space for it, and we'd like to have the maximum number of Ethereals for Inspiring Loot. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So 30 points for a finisher there. Germain, as we said, doesn't quite have enough room to spawn in all the cows, but we anticipated that would happen. And this is why we consumed the card that had poison before, because we expected it to have more poison in the future. They might still have poison on this last card here, but now it's Inspiring Loot, and we boost all these guys. And that is a big finisher. So even if they do find a way to remove you, we should still be fine. And technically, we should do this. So they have no way to remove with poison on this last turn. Because we'll see if this last card was going to have it. No, they're going to play more cards from our deck.
I shall be your eyes, my lord.
And it's a terrible card that they put there. They did it to themselves. Alright, so that one wasn't too bad. And we finally got the chance to see what the Ethereal can do when it has the chance to really kick off. Okay, Morkvarg is a card that you like to destroy. Spawn drones, boost all other insectoids. I mean, if we had a bunch of ways to spawn drones specifically, then that'd be nice, but for the most part, we're looking at rats and cows. Could remove Catechin. It's been okay. It's been one of those kind of awkward cards where, yes, technically it does spawn in more units for us, so it's been potentially set up for Ethereal. Not amazing setup for Ethereal because Catechin is a 6, so Ethereal is only a +6 when compared to something like Night Wraith where it's a +9. Spawns in a single 3-power Ekimara, which is a +9 rather than a +11 in the case of the rats that come from the Night Wraiths. So Night Wraith is, I mean, at the end of the day, it's still a 12-point unit that gets on the board regardless. But what I'm getting at, it is still basically a worse Night Wraith, because it spawns in one less unit. I mean, until it gets consumed, and then, even then, that's less. So, yeah, the only real good use for this is that it's less likely to flood a row. But as long as we're paying attention, that shouldn't be too much of a problem. So I think we actually benefit from removing it. And again, just further increase our consistency by getting rid of the cards that are not that important to us. And we've done that quite a lot. And I think that has helped us because although we didn't get MEVE that time, they in fact stole her. We should more regularly get MEVE, get Ethereal, get the really high priority stuff. In fact, how many cards do we even have in our deck right now? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. And we get 10 cards every match. So there's only 4 cards we won't get the chance to play. If we remove one here, there are only 3 cards we won't get the chance to play. So assuming you mulligan out of some of your bad ones, you might still draw into them partway through the match. But that gives us not perfect, but very solid consistency, given how much removal we've done. I know we added that previously, but at the time I think we had said it's kind of okay, but not amazing. And that means, I believe our max energy, despite it saying 100 here, is actually 75. So if we are to go to this place of power, we do not get the full benefit out of restoring energy here. We can only get 12, and I think it would usually restore 20. So, you know, is that reason enough not to take the energy, or do you say, yeah, you take the energy, that way if things go awry in any of these encounters, you still feel okay about spamming some spells? So otherwise it's duplicate. Obviously we just removed a card, but we could basically, for all intents and purposes, replace that Catechin with another Ethereal is probably what it would be that we would go for. Because we can't create another key card, so we can't get 2 MEVEs. So I think it'd probably be you. I mean, getting 2 Ethereals is not as good as it sounds, because in theory, 1 Ethereal can fill an entire row with copies of itself. So a second Ethereal, you could play in the other row and fill that row with copies of itself, but you're never gonna really benefit from playing Ethereal in the same row, and there are still some cards that we do not want Ethereal to transform into a copy of itself. Obviously, MEVE, sometimes Germain, but we've seen for the most part we have enough unit spawning that has not been a huge concern. Potentially Slizzard if we really want to consolidate our power. Potentially Villain Tretton Mirth if we are trying to trigger that. I mean, it could still work. We will go this route, I think, because I'd rather not go Elite Bat. Well, do have a lot of energy. We do have a lot of energy. Remind me what the upgrade. Next upgrade for MEVE is. It increases the frequency, right? Every 2 turns rather than every 3 turns. I don't know if that's enough of a difference maker for us to do that, even if there is a place of power afterward to restore the energy that we are likely to use there. I mean, if it's failed experiments or, well, some of the other more difficult ones, we'd probably need to use a very large sum of energy, so I think it's just not worth taking the risk at this point, especially when our deck is not that powerful. So we go here. The question is, do we duplicate the Ethereal, or do we just take the energy? This is definitely the safe option. Gives us a safety net for the next battles. If we do find a tough opponent that we need to spend some energy on, we still feel okay about that. Gives us a higher probability of drawing one of those Ethereals. As I said, 2 Ethereals in the same match. One of them would need to go in the melee row, where we have that that passive artifacts, the armor, is taking up a spot, and that makes it a little bit trickier not to get the ethereal stuck on that. And there are still some units that we don't really want to get the ethereal to destroy, and so for the most part we've been playing those in the melee row. So it's not impossible, but it's definitely not as... There are diminishing returns by having a second one, as powerful as that ethereal may be. Really comes down to just what do we think is going to happen for those next encounters. I think we played safe. I think we've invested enough in that ethereal already. Yes, we could have gotten it up to 15 earlier. Yes, we could have duplicated it there. But I think just in case, we'd like to make sure that we have what it takes to win these two battles here. Because at the end of the run, sometimes they can be rather tough. Prophet is not one that we've fought often. He's kind of wonky, isn't he? Allied deploy abilities trigger an additional time. Ooh. I really wish I remembered what his deploy abilities were. Because that is potentially substantially powerful. Well, significantly powerful. MEVE plus ethereal, I do love that. I mean, so didn't need the additional ethereal this time around. And also, the inspiring loot, which we could use to, well, power up a bunch of ethereals. Germain range row to spawn in cows, and we'll eventually destroy Germain to create an ethereal. I think it's probably what we'll do. MEVE melee row. No idea if we're going to want Cyclops for damage. Jalmar is probably just a better version of the same thing. So I think we go for this. Okay, and this, if they destroy some of our cards in the range row, could be a way to continue to feed ethereal, but I think we'll still go MEVE first, melee row.
We will never bow to the invader.
Then it's Germain range, then it's ethereal range. Okay. Boost self. Five twice, right? Oh, okay, 2 separate units, but yes, it is 5 twice. So now it's... No, not you. You.
You won't take us alive.
So it takes up a lot of room, of course, which is why we've grown a little wary of playing Germain. Consume, spawn a harpy egg. That means you can immediately consume that harpy egg. That's kind of nifty. I'm kind of like a villain Fretmirth, because that's pretty big. Now we go ethereal. Play you here, which does mean that eventually you will consume Germain, will spawn in there. But as we were saying, this row is getting very full. So we do need to be careful. Actually, Scissored is useful, though. As we saw in at least one previous encounter, we can use it to consume some other stuff and create some space if necessary. So that ethereal can keep on doing its thing without having to worry about hitting the end of the row and clogging itself. It does mean that potentially a smaller inspiring loot, but there goes MEVE. Ooh, I don't like the double lock, though. You and you would be ideal. Yeah, that's huge. That's actually huge. Wow. Wow. Okay. What do we do about that? That hurt. That hurt a lot. So there goes our preferred inspiring loot target. It's no longer going to be ethereal. Is it cow? Is it rat? Could be rat if we consume the Night Wraith with Slizzard. You still are not locked, so we might get more cows, in which case those would become the preferred loot targets. No longer have as much of a need for the Slizzard, but I mean, maybe we break you out here and just use you as a way to destroy Harpy Egg and the Night Wraith. Okay. Yeah, that hurt a lot. I mean, we did get 1 turn of MEVE's boost and 1 additional ethereal, but that was definitely a pretty big blow. And that could get huge as well. Yeah, okay. No, it was a... Ooh, love this. Love this. But yeah, it was, I think, either 2 5s or a 6 and a 4, 7 and a 3, so on and so forth. It wasn't you know, a 10. Oh wait, was it a double 10? No, it was a double 10. It was a double 10. Yeah, so it was huge. So Villain Treadmirth could destroy this, which is very nice. I was initially thinking we'd destroy a 19 power unit, but 22, we'll take that too. Do need to make some more space. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in this row. Get 3 more from Night Wraith. That gets us to 8, which means we have 1 more spot, which means we can fit in Hjalmar on our next turn, which is what I'm thinking of. So I want to maximize the damage from him while still having room to play him, of course. So I think we do this. And Hjalmar next turn.
Your blood will warm my bones.
And use Hjalmar to destroy this slightly weaker card. I'm curious who they go after. Yeah, that's not a huge deal once that's locked. Spawn in with Germain. Now this is a little questionable because we might run out of space since we don't currently have a way to destroy these anymore. Put our Slizzard in this row, but... So now we can go, and we could consume you actually. And then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I think that fills the row perfectly. And then we go Hjalmar, and then we play every subsequent unit in the melee row after consuming stuff with Slizzard. I think that's the plan. So, should be a lot of damage now for Hjalmar. Yes, our rows are completely full, but again, we will use Slizzard to create Space Force. Don't hit the tallest unit, because we'll use Villain Treadmirth to get rid of that. But 16 damage is pretty nice. We might need... Wait. We can exceed 75? We did not take the... Thought that we had the curse that limited us to 75 energy, but apparently not. Okay, so... Technically speaking, they destroyed one of our units, so we do have room for Harpy Egg. And I think we can still consume and spawn in the Harpy. I think we tried that earlier, and that does still work. We are going to need to play Villain Treadmirth fairly soon on our second to last turn. Yep, perfectly fills this row, but again, we can, as long as Slizzard does not get locked or destroyed. I mean, if it gets destroyed, then we have room for 1 more card, but... It's pretty hard for them to do that at this stage. Don't want it to become the highest card, though. Don't have many damage cards. What, just 2 of them?
Keep together.
Okay, so now... We'd like Traveling Priestess. And probably go for the boost. Because even then, our highest card right now is 13, so Gascon is way higher than that. Don't need to worry about hitting ourselves with Villain Treadmirth, and our finisher is Inspiring Loot. On the cows, which will definitely still be way too small for Villain Treadmirth to hit, so that shouldn't be an issue. So, I mean, let's deliberately stay small here. And also eats a damage unit, in case they have more damage unit synergies. So let's go for the Masterful Cleanse. Okay, damage unit by 4, banish it. You are technically creating Space Force, so we'll take it. And that means we can play Villain Treadmirth. We don't want to spawn in, otherwise we don't have room for... I mean, we... Technically, we can spawn in for 1 additional point, and then... And that is an additional cow, which is actually really good for Inspiring Loot. Then we consume something small, and that's still small enough that you'll be below Gascon. Yeah, that is the way to do it. You consume, like, a... We'll consume a Volunteer. It's still low enough that Slizzard will be smaller than Gascon. I want to do that in case something happens to our cows. We have a backup plan with 3 rats. Obviously, it's not quite as good, but now we do this. And our plan is to go Inspiring Loot on cows in our last turn, but this is the backup plan. And we have just enough time for this to trigger. And this last card is theoretically going to be kind of big, but now we don't need to consume anything. We just do this. Create a lot of boosts. We have a big lead here, and it's about to get a lot bigger once we get rid of Gascon with Villain Treadmirth. And I don't think we needed to use any energy there, but Great Oak is a big finisher. We have a large enough lead. They still will not catch us, though. So that's definitely a good sign. Profit down. And there are not that many battles remaining here, so not very many opportunities or times in which we might find ourselves feeling in need of spending energy going into the boss fight, or just before the boss fight. If we have... This is exactly the opposite of what this card does in Gwent multiplayer, right? At the end of your turn, if you control more units than your opponent, boost self by 1. It's, in multiplayer, it's if you have less units, boost yourself by 1, but we do spawn a lot of units, so this is technically an engine that could be of some value to us. It's not a card we want to destroy, which, you know, we need to be kind of careful of that, because there are oftentimes matches in which we need to get rid of units to make space for other ones, but just saw our opponent use this, but I don't think that's really all that useful to us. That is cool how it gives the aura after it did not have that to begin with, but we upgraded it to have higher base power, and so it so much so that it now has that gold aura. But no, we're gonna keep both these. I think this is obviously very important to us, and Night Wraith, although not amazing, it does spawn in a ton of rats, which has been very helpful to power up Ethereal in particular. I think we take Ice Troll. It's not amazing. If we get the opportunity to remove it later, honestly, we might, but in theory, it is an engine that could still give us some value. And now there is not much left here. There's just one event and one battle before the boss. So we're getting very close. Let's see what this is. It's an unstable place of power. Gain 1 to 100 energy and gain 2 wound cards. Yeah, see, the thing is we're on 83 energy, so we very much do not need this. So we're just going to leave. And honestly, we're okay with that. Because most of all, we just didn't want to see anything negative at that event. Didn't want to see anything that would cause any complications heading into the boss fight. And so for this battle, don't know what it's going to be, but we have theoretically some energy to spare. Have we ever seen this guy? I'm not sure if we have. What's your deal? Doesn't say you're a hard enemy, but you know, we'll see. Poison an enemy unit. Death blow split. Boost equal to the target unit's power randomly between all allied units. Cooldown 3. Okay, so you're poison spammer and potentially getting boosted based on the power of the unit that you destroy with poison. Presumably you're going to go after our most highly boosted cards. On one hand, we can use things like the Slizzard, if we get it, to consume cards that have poison. That is a good way to work around poison, because then it just goes away. On the other hand, that means Slizzard will get highly boosted, and if you poison that, it can't consume itself, so then we have an issue. But Cyclops can destroy a card that has poison as well, so that is kind of nice. And it also, if we happen to get our Slizzard and consume a bunch of stuff, then Villain Treadmirth might backfire on us, so that's also not great for that reason. I think we dump Harpy Egg here. Ethereal is definitely a good pickup when combined with Night Wraith in particular. Obviously would like to see MEVE, but these cards are all workable here. This might not be all that inspiring, but it works really well with Ethereal. And normally I would get rid of Cyclops, but I think against this opponent in particular, where we might want to destroy a unit that has poison on it, this is a nice counter to that. So let's stick with this. And we draw into MEVE. Perfect. Okay, so MEVE, I imagine, especially when they're going to have leader ability on their first turn, would absolutely be a card that they would prioritize hitting with bleed, or rather hitting with poison. So let's actually start with Night Wraith. Then we'll use Ethereal. So we play this. Night Wraith itself is probably going to get poisoned. We use Ethereal to destroy it, and that means we get rid of their first poison. And then we can play MEVE on the turn after that, and think they'll just barely be on cooldown. I'm hoping at that point they're distracted by all the Ethereals. So that's, at least in theory, what I'm thinking we go with here. Yep, they poisoned that. As expected, do they have additional poison here? Jaeger. Ooh. Ooh. 11 armor, yes, but if it loses that armor, it gets destroyed. And that means that we can have a very solid target for Hjalmar to go after, I think. But the plan was Ethereal here. Destroy this, spawn in a bunch of rats. We do need to be careful that we don't run out of space, but with poison, they could theoretically destroy some of the cards in this row, which would potentially help us. Still have room to continue to use Ethereal, because there is another Night Wraith over here that we would eventually like to play in this row. But now they're on cooldown, so we don't need to be too concerned about poison at the moment, unless they have units that will, or special cards that will apply poison, like that. So if they're going after this Ethereal, though, or that one, then it's actually kind of fine, because this one has already done its thing. It's not a super high priority. So we just do this. That is the benefit of Ethereal, is once it's used its order, I mean, yes, it's still a 12-point body, which is powerful, but it's not critically important that it stays alive anymore. So now I think we play MEVE, because you're going to be on cooldown, and I'm hoping that, especially since this has poison, that they're going to get distracted by this and try to go after it. And yes, it means that split the boost randomly between all allied units. Okay, because what I'd love to see is to have either this Yigern get really tall and then we destroy it with Hjalmar and just go, haha, so much for your boosts. They're not worth anything because all that matters is your armor. Or, you know, if for whatever reason Hjalmar can't destroy it, or after Hjalmar destroys it, those boosts go to some other card, then we break out Villain Treadmirth, and I would think that they'd have the tallest unit. I mean, they do right now, but after Yigern, we have the second highest, so we shall see. More poison. Who are they creating a copy of, though? It is Ethereal, as we suspected that it might be. But, so now we could even go relatively early, Villain Treadmirth. Villain Treadmirth here. Wait, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. What I'm wondering is, could we destroy this Yigern and then have Villain Treadmirth with Hjalmar, and then have Villain Treadmirth destroy this Ethereal before it gets a chance to duplicate itself all that much? They are probably going to at least be able to create a couple more Ethereals, though, and at that point, we don't know which one Villain Treadmirth would destroy, so... Oh, and also our Ethereals are timed for that. Yes, that's not worth doing. Don't do that yet. No. So, in that case, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Said it before, it's dangerous. It is dangerous to play Night Wraith in this row. Because 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It's almost full, just from the deploy ability. And if we trigger the Death Wish, then it will be full. So we could play you at the very end, and, you know, eventually we'd eat through the rats and get to this Night Wraith, but we could play you here, and you'd never actually get consumed by Ethereal, and we just have the rats. Or we go Harpy Egg, which is just a probably safer in-between approach. Yeah, we'd probably do that. Now they're going for this one. Now this one, we want to stay alive. This is not good. That's bad, because now our Ethereals have been shut down permanently. Alright, and that means Ethereal will not be our inspiring loot target. It might end up being the rats. Oh. That stinks. That stinks. That was the risk, was leader ability plus another unit with poison on the same turn. That was the only way they're going to be able to shut down Ethereal, and they did manage to do it. And they can still have their Ethereal do its thing. So that's not good. So, of course, we have more energy than we could ever... well, we would never use 83 energy in one encounter. And there's only one more encounter after this, it's the boss fight. So we can get kind of aggressive here, I think. Which means 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 10 with Hjalmar. If we go with something like Rat Swarm, we could get enough damage to destroy this Ethereal and cut off that combo. And then Yigern remains the highest power unit, which means Villain Treadmirth can still destroy it. It was a very natural fit to have Hjalmar go after you. Technically, Cyclops does have enough damage to do it with hitting an Ethereal, and since Ethereal is not going to be the loot target anyway, that's not a terrible thing. So I think that's what we do. It's Rats this turn for Hjalmar to destroy this Ethereal, to limit how many copies of it they can create. Then later, it's Cyclops, destroy Ethereal, destroy Yigurn. Hope they don't have Ozrael that gains power from consuming a unit from their graveyard, so if they have a high power unit in their graveyard like Yigurn, then it's going to make it that much stronger. Don't know. Not sure. But I think that is still the way to go here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's room for 3 more here. Rat Swarm spawns 4, right? Yeah. Don't really want to go there. We could end up... We probably will end up clogging ourselves, to be honest. Are we drawing any more cards? We are not. 1, 2, 3, 4. Spawn in 4. Play Hjalmar. We have room for 3 more cards here. 1, 2, and 3, but you remove 1, which makes room for you. You're going to spawn more rats, which we do want to see for inspiring loot. Kind of want them to have damage, to be honest. Oh, right, they might remove with poison. Okay, but it's going to be these Ethereals if they do. I don't know, man. It's tough. Spawn the rats in this row where there's enough room for them. Use Hjalmar. Destroy Ethereal. It also is good timing for MEVE to do her boost on more units. Okay. You're probably going to go after one of these guys. So I think that means this is the turn on which we do Cyclops, destroy the unit with poison, and destroy Yigurn. Ooh. Villain Treadmirth is going to be an issue, isn't it? Unless we let them get this. We might have to let them do this. Otherwise, Villain Treadmirth is going to backfire. I mean, we can play it on our last turn, or wait until our rows are completely clogged where we just can't use it at all. This could be a problem.
Feeling a bit peckish.
Okay. So assuming that this gets destroyed with poison from their leader ability, they will split 13 power across their units, which we are hoping means this becomes the highest unit on the board, which means Villain Treadmirth becomes playable. One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Room for 3 means Night Wraith completely fills the board, which means we are clogged unless you play poison to remove Ethereal. We could still go Inspiring Loot for 1 turn. We'd like to... yeah. It's risky. Let's... probably should go Traveling Priestess first just to play it safe. It's not perfect because I was going to go Cleanse here and we aren't quite full. And it does mean that, yes, this Ethereal is getting taller, but again, we're assuming this is going to get destroyed and split its boosts across their cards and hopefully make this the highest unit on the board so that Villain Treadmirth becomes playable. Okay, there it is. And you're... come on. Just all the boosts go on this Ethereal. All the boosts go on that, please. Okay, now they're going after MEVE, which fortunately took them a long time to do that. Going wide, for what it's worth, it's generally a good counter for poison, because you can only destroy, for the most part, 1 card at a time with poison, and if we're splitting our power across numerous cards, then that's making the poison removal less effective. So now, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 means this fills the row, which is not good, so we need room for Villain Treadmirth. So we should play Villain Treadmirth here, and slightly early, but we're assuming this is going to be the card gets destroyed, and it is currently the highest card, so that's okay. You're on cooldown, so you won't have the source of poison here, which means it is very unlikely that they can double poison in 1 turn to remove Villain Treadmirth. So I think This is the time to do it. And also MEVE is going to go off on this turn, which is still fine. Yes, could have gotten a little more boost if we had done Knight right there, but then we might not have had room for Villain Treadmirth, which again was pretty important. Could have maybe used it to replace MEVE if she's about to get destroyed. And she is. But we were not going to get any more turns out of her anyway. So now we go Night Wraith. Don't quite have enough room to spawn in the maximum rattage. But we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 rats. So 40-point Inspiring Loot, which is pretty sweet. And this is about to destroy this 16-point Ethereal. There it is. Okay, not too worried about that, I don't think. So now this is a big finisher, which I think means we should be fine here. And did we had to use one spell to spawn in rats, and that's our cheapest spell anyway, so no big deal, I don't think. Unless they have an amazing finisher here. Which, I mean, they probably have poison to remove that rat, but, you know, if that's the best you can do, then also ironic that a rat is destroying a rat, but we're fine. We're fine. Alright, so Giant Toad taken care of. I can't remember if we've encountered that guy before, but I think usually we get an achievement when we defeat somebody for the first time, so maybe we have seen it. Progress for more consumption. Oak critters for bleed, and yes, it does technically spawn in another copy of itself, which is kind of nice. Next encounter is the boss, and that is the last encounter. So basically this decision should be entirely based on what do we or don't we want for the boss. I don't think either of these make a huge difference. The boss does have something that, the status infection or something like that, that can weaken a card by half its power, so we don't really want to load up on boosts in one unit, otherwise that means they're doing more damage to that one unit, which is good if we're going wide, and for the most part that is what we're trying to do. But that is not what Barghest does. Yes, it can help us clear out a little bit of space, true, but I think we might even dump Cyclops here. It is sometimes something that we use to get more room, but it's kind of a net zero room card because it takes a spot and also creates a spot for itself, basically. So I'm just not sure that's crucially important. And again, by getting rid of it, it just makes it more likely that we draw into things like MEVE, Ethereal. Not sure how much this boss really does with boosting. Does at least a little bit, but I'm not sure if it has any one unit that's going to get big enough for Villain Treadmirth to become a big factor, so that's maybe not going to be a terribly important card for us to draw into, but I think still, we might remove you. And are we going straight into the boss now? Yeah, we are. It's boss next. It is boss next. So, how many cards do we have in our deck here? It's 10... It's 13. Which is a very low number. Might even be the smallest number of cards we've ever had going into a boss fight, which means, again, our consistency here should be very solid. Should see almost every single card. Oh, and actually, one of these is Raven Armor that starts on the board, so it's really 12, or rather, 12 cards in our deck. So that is almost perfect. Especially once you factor in the mulligans, but here we go. It's the swamp monster, of course, and that animation gets me every time. So it is the boss, and I think it's the hardest boss.
We will be together.
Naturally, here I am saying that Villain Treadmirth may not be all that effective against this boss in particular, and we're drawn to it right off the bat. No MEVE, which I do think we really want. Ethereal would be nice. I think against this boss, they might be able to counter it to a certain extent. So I am skeptical about Villain Treadmirth. I'm also skeptical about Slizzard, to be honest. Because yes, it is very useful for us to clear out board space. On the other hand, it is potentially our card that goes the tallest, and this guy is good at punishing us when we go tall, because let's just remind ourselves how exactly it works. Every 3 turns, they can destroy one of their own cards, which is similar to what we do. If they have Death Wish, they can trigger that, of course. Whenever a unit other than Tentacle is destroyed during your turn, you spawn a Tentacle on a random row and boost it by the destroyed unit's base power. So functionally, they consume a unit and allocate that power onto Tentacle. And Tentacle, at the end of the turn, damages a random infected enemy by 1. If there are no infected enemies, then it infects a random enemy. And infection is the thing that I've been alluding to, where whenever an infected unit receives its status again, damage it by half its current power, ignoring armor. So if we have one high power card, say a Slizzard that has absorbed all the power of, it's consumed every other unit on the board, then it gets hit with the infection. First time, doesn't make a difference. Second time, though, we get all of our power halved, whereas if we have that power split fairly evenly across units, if one of them gets infected and gets infected a second time, then, just a small sliver of our total strength is getting lost. So that's why I like it when we go wide with things like MEVE, but I don't love Slizzard. I mean, we might keep them just because of the use case where, we can make it so that we don't completely clog ourselves, but with no Ethereal, that's not as big of an issue. I think we're one of these guys we're going to try to dump to get a bigger card. Well, that's not what I wanted. Not only did we not get rid of Villain Trettenberth, we also drew into Harpy Egg, which is not terribly useful. Okay, sure. Well, they're gonna get a Tentacle on this turn, which means they're going to immediately poison something. Or rather, immediately infect something. So, I think we might want to start by playing a card that we're not super concerned about getting that infection on it. So, although Slizzard usually be your first turn play, so that on your next turn you can immediately consume a Death Wish unit, I think we will instead start with the Death Wish unit. Either Harpy Egg or Night Wraith. Let's go Night Wraith. And so we have all the energy we could ever want here, I think. I think even if we spammed, we're going to take 10 turns, right? And our most expensive spell is 6 energy. So unless they have stuff that removes energy, I know the red boss has some things that can do that, but I don't remember if this boss can. Then unless they can do that, then we could spam even our most expensive spells every turn. And so, Masterful Thunder, though. I mean, they are going to destroy this with their leader ability, probably. It does have Death Wish, and it spawns in a bunch of rats, which I don't love. But maybe we still go after you. It might not kill you. It will kill you. So now, at least, when they get the Tentacle, it's going to be much weaker. I guess. And it's times like these where I wish we still had the Werecat, because that'd be really nice to just remove all these. Potentially still decent targets for Masterful Thunder, because that means we can get a lot of overkill damage. We have actually clogged this boss on prior occasions several times, I think, at that. And so that might even be something we try to do here. Infect an enemy unit. Destroy something and get the Tentacle. Oh, is it a random card that gets the infection? It is random. Okay, because I was going to say, surely you would have preferred to have gotten this. Night Wraith. MEVE. Oh, thank goodness, that's huge. Okay, so especially since they're on cooldown, I think we do break out MEVE here. And does anything happen on Death Wish? No? Okay, so I think we're just gonna, like I said, spam stuff every turn.
Onward to victory!
And does that mean boosting when we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 cards? Or does that mean damaging here? On one hand, boosting could get thwarted by the infection and or make it more likely that we have it backfire with Villain Trettenberth. On the other hand, the damage could make it more difficult for us to clog them, but getting rid of a Tentacle to reduce the amounts that they infect us could be nice. I mean, damaging this random infected unit would be kind of nice, though, because then there's nothing for you to... I mean, Earth Elemental is going to infect something, right? I guess that means we're still looking to Thunder. And the overkill damage is basically guaranteed to take them all out. So yeah, like I said, the downside there is that we're basically making it much less likely that they flood themselves. Yeah, I do remember this from a previous occasion. Okay. Ooh, don't like the infection on MEVE, but we do get Ethereal here. And I thought they had a card that made it so that when an infected unit gets destroyed, it spreads the infection to adjacent units. I'm not seeing it at the moment. It's not coming from the lead ability, is it? No. It's not built into the base infection. I say that because I'd like to play Ethereal here and destroy this Night Wraith, get rid of the infection, and create a much more powerful unit. And obviously this is a good pickup, so I think we do that. Infection does not seem to spread. It does mean that Ethereal is now the strongest card, which makes Villain Trettenmirth kind of scary. I was almost considering playing an early Villain Trettenmirth and seeing if we could get rid of this Earth Elemental, because it was the highest unit initially. But now... I mean, if one of these guys gets infected, then that could change quickly, so I don't know. We'd like to go with spells here, though. And maybe we just continue to destroy tentacles and limit the effect of all of their infection. Yes, we are starting to get more units to the point where we could more reasonably consider going the boosting route. Oh. Well, good thing we've destroyed some cards already, because you like it when we destroy cards. And Frightener is a 12 with Immune. Unfortunately not high enough for Villain or not guaranteed for Villain Trettenmirth to destroy you. And we would like to make sure we do some boosting here so that MEVE does not get destroyed, because that would be very unfortunate. So why don't we... And we could, what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 10 with Hjalmar is not quite enough to destroy you unless we use the Rat Swarm, which technically is a great way to get more value out of MEVE. But at what cost? Because it might mean MEVE is going to get destroyed. Affect the highest power unit in this row. Yeah, which keeps on being MEVE. Unless we play something else here, which means she's going to continue to get damaged. So if we use Hjalmar, if we go, wait, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Means 4 rats does just barely clog this row. Darn. It's going to say you do that, you use Ethereal, make that conversion, then you get Hjalmar in this row, destroy you, you'll have enough damage after spawning in the cards, you'll get more value out of MEVE's ability, you have a unit here that's going to take the infection rather than MEVE, but unfortunately not the case. Ugh, just close calls. I mean, we could... I guess we go Hjalmar on you and then Thunder should finish you off, I still think. Yeah. So it is going to be closer to triggering Frightener, but I think that's just a matter of time. It's pretty much inevitable. Yes, it's serious overkill damage, but the earlier we get rid of this, the more we shut down their infection, which is something that we are very much trying to do. Don't forget to do this. There's the boost. And since MEVE is going to boost other cards, it is unlikely for her to keep on getting infected from this. That is another Earth Elemental, though. Okay, so now you're the highest unit, which means you're going to hit by the infection. We do still have the highest unit. So you're still a liability. We could consume you with Slizzard if we need to, or deliberately just clog our rows entirely so we can't actually play you. Putting you in the melee row as another card that can take the infection away from MEVE. Kalmar we don't really care about, but he's already done his thing. Maybe that's not a terrible idea. So we want to keep MEVE safe. Yeah, I think so. I mean, nothing else is particularly time sensitive. Yes, the earlier we play Slizzard, the more consumption we can do, but not too sure that that's a super high priority. So I think we do this. And I'm pretty sure have more units than them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, way more. Alright. So, once again, we are not going to draw any more cards. This is everything we're going to see for the rest of the match. So, I think we could just destroy another tentacle. And overkill damage will at least remove your shield. Though I'm not sure that's going to make a big difference. Unless we're going to go all in on non-stop Masterful Thunders to try to take you out. So I was thinking this Traveling Priestess was going to go the boosting route. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 is going to be worth more, one would assume. Now that we have a decent number of units on the board. Yeah, I think we do that, and I think we're just gonna maybe play you on the last turn so Villain Treadmirth does not trigger at all. I think that's probably the plan. Yeah, whenever Thrive is triggered, boost all allied units? All allied units. We'd like to get rid of you, in that case. And we definitely can. So, let's do this. And guess we'll play Harpy Egg here to get more stuff in this row for you. Then we'll use you. This time we will go the damage route. And we have limited their number of cards a fair bit, so... Wait, what? Did I hit the wrong? I must have hit the wrong... Oops. Pretty sure I hit the card right next to Kiki More Queens that was going to hit it with the overkill damage, which was guaranteed to be enough because it was a 1-power rat, but I must have misclicked. Yes, it triggered Frightener, which, as we were saying, was going to happen eventually. I mean, there are fewer units on the board, so Kiki More Queen is worth less. And actually, for what it's worth, this is our best way to make it so that one of these becomes the highest unit and Villain Treadmirth becomes playable. So it's actually not a terrible thing that Thrive does trigger a few times, specifically to boost up these guys. I remember this was kind of nasty. What is the deal with it, though? At the end of your turn, damage random enemy unit by 1. There's a boost. Now you're 13. And yeah, we want you to be taking the infection every turn, basically. We are going to get boosted from MEVE. So we are going to see these guys get a little bit higher up. And they are, ideally, are inspiring loot targets as well, which is definitely going to make them even bigger still. But what is your deal? At the end of your turn, damage random enemy unit by 1, then boost self by 1 if this unit's power reaches 8 or higher, destroy self. Death Wish, boost all allied units by 2. I mean, if we trigger that Death Wish, then that gets you up to 15, and we like that. So I think what we're doing here is we're just delaying our boosting ever so slightly. Then we're going Villain Treadmirth, and it is playable. Might even deliberately just eat this Slizzard. Because we can. Let's do this first. Spawn you in. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 is just enough to safely play you. So now you will get destroyed at the end of the next turn just from your passive ability. So let's not damage you. We're going to deliberately have you get boosted, trigger the death blow, or death wish, boost you up to 15. Just going to be tied once MEVE boosts up all of our ethereals, and chances are... Oh, but then once you trigger Thrive, which you're very likely to do, then probably still going to be the highest card, which means Villain Treadmirth is still playable. So yeah, I think we're good. I think we're good as long as we do not boost here. We don't destroy you. Let's just destroy this tentacle, because we'll shut down some of their infection synergies in that case. There's the MEVE boost. They destroyed a card. You're up to 15. Want this to trigger, though, and it will. So now you're 16. Which means as long as we hold off on boosting the ethereals, Villain Treadmirth can destroy you, rather than one of you, which we definitely want. And by playing it on this turn, that means it will trigger just before our last turn, so we'll still have time to boost up with Inspiring Loot on these guys, which would make them the highest card, likely to make them the highest card. So the timing is just about perfect for us. And I'm going to put you in this row just because otherwise you're going to clog all these guys. Does mean you are actually the highest unit here, so you will be the one that gets infected. It's a little scary, but I mean, if you get destroyed, it's not the end of the world. We spent this entire time just trying to make it so you wouldn't backfire on us. If you get destroyed altogether, then okay, so be it. So we have a pretty big lead here. We can still use leader abilities, but we don't really want to go the boosting route. Once again, we want to make sure you stay the highest card. So Pache is a little threatening. A little threatening. We do not have enough damage to take it out, though, which means if we weaken it here, we are just making it easier for it to trigger the Thrive. However, if we go damage with this leader ability, next turn we can go damage with Traveling Priestess. Again, this was going to be something I was going to use to boost everybody, but we don't want to do that because then we are tied at 16 apiece, and that is not what we want when we have Villain Treadmirth about to go off. So I think we do still go damage here. Hit you, it means short term, yes, this is going to trigger Thrive on their next turn, but we should be able to destroy you with Traveling Priestess next time we go. Axel 3 Eyes. We've destroyed many of your units. Could have potentially been the highest card on the board. But okay, so now at the end of this turn, Villain Treadmirth will go off, which means as long as these guys are 16 or lower, we're fine. So we do this. And we do Traveling Priestess. We go Thunder, destroy the Kache. Technically speaking, we can still go and use a cleanse here, because that would get us up to 16s here. You're still 17, so Villain Treadmirth destroys you. And we have avoided the self-sabotage. So there we go. And then we will finish, I don't remember what this does, infect a bunch of people. Then we finish with 8 ethereals, which is the maximum, because as we've said many times before, if we fill the row, then they just brick. So that is, what, 40 points with our finisher. And MEVE is triggering here. It is safe to make these the highest unit card now, because we've already had Villain Treadmirth trigger. And so we can do that, and we can also go for Cleanse, which I assume is more effective than going with damage. I mean, yeah, we could probably get rid of their Thrive card, but that's much smaller than this would be. And MEVE is going to go off as our finisher, so looks like we should have a very solid lead here. So even with this infection, we will hold on for a convincing win against the boss. So Swamp Monster down, and there you have it. We got pretty much the perfect setup for those highly boosted ethereals, we narrowly avoided having Villain Treadmirth backfire. We anticipated that that would have potentially been an issue between those two, and we got a pretty early MEVE to boost up a bunch of our cards as well. And as we were saying, wide boost, definitely very useful against that boss rather than the tall boost, especially when you're running Villain Treadmirth. So just one elite taken down on that fight, but otherwise, well, a successful run. And hopefully that means we unlock a fair bit of stuff here. We are up to 60. Let's see what we have just gotten. So, is it this that we got the first set of unlocks, or did we already have these? I don't remember. Passive, gain 7 energy and downgrade a random allied unit in your deck by 1. I remember seeing this before. Spend energy to at the cost, or gain energy at the cost of weakening a unit, and you can do that 13 times. Number of charges is not reset in between. Is not reset in between battles. There's just a crazy amount of energy potential. Is that a permanent downgrade? It might be. Remove 2 cards and self from your deck, assuming you get to choose which cards. That's a great way to get consistency. End of your turn, boost a random unit in your hand by 1. It's probably for Bulwark. Damage an enemy unit by base power, that's probably for Savage Fury. And Dunka hand boosting, also probably Bulwark. Then Masterful Rapid Evolution, transform an allied unit into a random one, then repeat this ability 2 more times. Yeah, we saw this before, but I don't understand how this works. Does that mean that you transform into 2 additional random cards? Or does that mean that you're just transforming the same unit multiple times, and what's the point in transforming a couple times if they just get overwritten by the last one? So I don't really get how that works. Or how it's different, functionally different, from just the normal rapid evolution. But maybe we'll test it out. Dwarven Chariot, spawn a rowdy dwarf in this row. Give an allied unit 1 armor, cooldown 1. Not even sure. Maybe that's Hive Mind, since it spawned stuff. Yarpin, damage enemy unit by 3 at the end of your turn, lose all armor, boost self by that amount. A little bit of combination of damage and boosts. Old geared, this unit's power cannot be changed by any other cards or abilities, and not sure what its base power is, but I think it's relatively high. It got recently changed in Gwent multiplayer, so I think it's not. It got recently buffed in Gwent multiplayer. I don't think that's the case in Rogue Mage, or at least I kind of doubt it. We have also unlocked Ring of Favor, which is a new treasure. It's a passive. At the start of the battle, shuffle 2 random treasures into your deck. Okay, so I assume that's... Wait. So are those 2 random treasures in for just that one encounter? Surely you're not gaining 2 treasures that stay in your deck permanently every battle. Otherwise, that is absurdly powerful, and eventually your deck is going to be entirely treasures. Which, I mean, might sound fantastic and is to a certain extent, but at some point you need to play units. I mean, some of the treasures are units, but still. So I assume it's 2 random treasures for that battle and that battle alone, and then it basically resets. Going to the next battle, you get another 2 random treasures, but you lose the ones you had in the previous battle. Then we are working toward Lonely Champion. Destroy all their units in this row and boost self by the sum of their power. So this actually would have been kind of helpful in that run that we just completed, because basically what this does is, if you're trying to swarm, as we just were, and use a card like MEVE to benefit from that swarm, then it can get tricky when you run out of board space. If you do that mid-match, then what do? You can't really play any more units. If you have Lonely Champion, you can destroy all the other units, and in doing so, absorb all their power, and make it so you actually have room to continue to play, whereas otherwise you might not. And you just want to make sure that you don't play it in the same row as something like MEVE. You know, in that situation, take the previous battle, for example. We would use it in the range row and just absorb all the ethereals, especially since the ethereals didn't have any more room to consume stuff anyway. So that's a little tough to pull off, but can solve what would otherwise be one of the biggest problems for Swarm deck. Crow Mother. Spawn 2 crows in this row whenever you play a special. summon self from your graveyard to a random allied row. That must be Hive Mind as well, right? Because otherwise you'd have no way of guaranteeing that it can be in your graveyard. So it's basically a card that you want to consume, and then it can come back out, kind of like a mini version of Detloff in a way. Rather than automatically coming back, you have to play a special card, which for the most part is going to mean your spells. So you could technically do it every turn if you spammed a spell every turn. That'd be kind of interesting. If you did a bunch of stuff to set yourself up to maximize spell usage. At least against bosses, you could probably justify that. Against normal enemies, probably not, but that's interesting. And then, again, just reconsume it every turn, much like you would with Detloff when played with a Slizzard. Vermeed, boost an allied unit and all copies of it by 2. That's weird. That is almost exactly the same as a totally different card in Gwent multiplayer, but again, is basically definitely for swarm decks. You'd use it for basically the same deck we were just running, where if we had a whole bunch of copies of the rats or of the cows, then you use Freed on that, and it's basically just a unit version that is not quite big on the boosting, but very similar to the, I forget what it was called, but the treasure that we got midway through the match that boosted all the same, or every copy of a unit by 5. Then Visions, we've not yet unlocked. We're also in progress on this, we haven't gotten these yet, but in the future Visions, play a card from your deck. Oh! So there's the one that has you draw a card and either discard a card or put a card back into your deck, which is there for consistency's sake. But you can't guarantee which card you get. So on net, it doesn't really guarantee that you get any points. Whereas Visions is much better than that, because you do guarantee which cards you get. So if, for example, you have MEVE stuck in your deck, or Ethereal stuck in your deck, or, you know, insert card that counters whatever it is your opponent is doing stuck in your deck, it's a way to make sure that you can still use that. And not only that, not only is it a guaranteed way to play a card, it also means a guaranteed way to play a specific card from your deck. I forget what the name of the very similar spell is, but for that one, it's just draw a card, discard a card. You're still only playing one card on a turn, the one that you're using directly from your hand. In this case, you can still play a card from your hand and use the spell, and play a card from your deck as well. So that's actually 2 cards you're playing per turn, so this is substantially powerful. I keep on using that. It is very powerful. It's a great addition to many decks, and I also love how it's very similar to a card from multiplayer Gwent called Oniromancy that is basically about based on experiencing dreams, visions in order to predict the future, kind of, sorta. And so Visions is thematically very similar in its name and also in its effect, so I love that little sort of an Easter egg of sorts. And this card doesn't exist in multiplayer Gwent. But that is, of course, another mutagen from another successful run, and that means that we should be expecting to run into the Fiery Fiend Red boss next, and as I think I said in that previous run, I think that's the easiest boss, so I think that's probably a good sign that we, have done the hard part. But as for what comes next, that is a good question, because we have now completed a run with every key card from every type of deck, with one notable exception, that being the Chaos deck, which randomizes our key card and randomizes the cards that we get added to our deck, or in our starting deck as well. And so that is potentially something we might look to do next. Alternatively, we also spoke about trying out what would be Hive Mind, but with Detloff Higher Vampire, and I think is probably the approach we would take, and seeing if we could basically just go for a high score, and probably just don't even care about whether we win the run or not, because I think when we did this one, the Hive Mind Detloff Higher Vampire run previously, There were a few occasions on which we had the potential to go all in on maximum pointage, but rather than win by more, we opted to win more consistently. So basically, if we do a run in which we say to heck with consistency, we just want to try our best at maybe getting all the way up to 1,000 points, which I think is possible with the right cards. So that is maybe what we might want to do next. And in that situation, because if we're saying to heck with consistency, we might actually just re-roll the run consistently because until we get a really nice layout. Because Detloff, one of the things that makes him so good is that initially you can only consume him 4 times and then he'll stop coming back onto the board. Once you upgrade him from one elite battle, there's a limitless number of times you can get him back. Then if you upgrade him another time, every time he comes back, his power increases. And then I forget what happens if you upgrade him once more after that, but I think it starts to compound really, really rapidly. So if you do that and combine it with Slizzards that can do a round of consumption every single turn, and you deliberately duplicate your Slizzards, then you can, once you at least upgrade Detloff so that he can come out an unlimited number of times, you can just consume him non-stop. And if you get a Girdle of Giant Strength to double the power of a unit, you do that at the end after allocating all of your power into a single Slizzard. And then, you know, if that Slizzard gets up to 500 points or more, you double it and it gets up to 1,000. So that's kind of the game plan, and we might do that. But as I said, if we go that route, we'll probably say, all right, you know what? We need everything to be working in our favor because we are going to abandon all hopes of consistency and just wait until we get a perfect board. And so we'll be looking for things like the duplication for a card for Slizzard. We'll be looking for treasure chests for Girdle of Giant Strength and a bunch of elite battles that we will aggressively pursue with to try to upgrade Detloff. And, you know, there are a lot of things that could go wrong in that case. And so, you know, we'll probably fail a few times before we succeed, and even then, I'm not sure if we'll reach 1,000, but that's the idea. So I might opt to go that route next. Either that, or we just go full out, completely random, total RNG, crazy chaos, and not only do that with the deck archetype, but also choose some high chaos, high RNG spells as well. So those are the two things I'm considering. I suppose let me know if you have any thoughts, any opinions when it comes to those two things. I think I would like to do both of them at some point in time, but not 100% certain which one I would do first. That and one more mutagen completes this round here. And I think I mentioned this previously, but once we have finished a run with every single deck type, which once we've done the Chaos deck, we will have done, do we want to continue to play more Rogue Mage, or do we feel like at that point, been there, done that, there's not much left for us to experience? I mean, of course, there's some randomization with every run. You don't know what cards you're going to get. You don't know what enemies you're going to go up against, especially if you're using the random deck. So, again, I pose that question to you all. Is that something that you would like us to continue to do, or does it feel like, at this point, it's starting to grow stale?